Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. My name is Jimmy Good, and I'm your host. And joining me this week, we have a very special guest from Rob Plays. It's Rob. Rob, how are you doing, man?
Hey, Jimmy, and hi, Internet.
Yes.
Hi, little Captain America back there, and Mickey Mouse, and other Mickey Mouse.
Exactly. Well, I got both the Mickeys. I don't know if it's like a weird thing to have both of them there, like looking kind of at each other. Kind of.
It's a multiverse, different Mickeys. They're staying on their sides. You know,
Exactly.
They're not fighting. They're just living in their own life. You know?
Exactly. I'm thinking it's kind of like Kingdom Hearts style, where there's like the Steamboat Willie Mickey is different from the actual Mickey, and it's like kind of like a weird universe, but it all makes sense. So this is Kingdom Hearts 3, basically, right here. Captain America. We're announcing him now. So
there you go. You know what? And that's probably what we'll have to work with for the next year at this point.
Yep, pretty much. Yes, well, actually, thank you to everybody who's watching us. Like you said, hi, Internet. Hi, Internet. Hi, Legionnaires. How's it going, everybody? We talk games, movies, TV shows, all that fun stuff. We're going to start off with a little bit of news before we dig into the meat, the topic of today's show. Rob, how do you feel about Predator? Do you like Predator?
So admittedly, I've never fully seen the original. Like, I've seen bits here and there. I've seen, especially after like Arrested Development and Carl Weathers and all of that, I've seen bits. So like, take it or leave it kind of person. I saw the trailer. I was what's the term people use when they're being snarky about it? I was whelmed. Like, I was like, all right, this is a trailer. It didn't look bad. Like, we live in a post-movie pass world right now, so I'm like, yeah, I'll go see it. Why not? It looked interesting.
That's really funny because I think as a fan of Predator, I also felt the same way. It kind of had like a Venom trailer vibe to it a little bit to me. I don't know, where it's kind of like scientists and like this thing that's coming here to kill the scientists or maybe something. I don't really know.
Yeah, and who is that being directed by? Wasn't there one directed by Robert Rodriguez? This is not that one, right?
This is Shane Black from Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 3.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Or the Good Guys. Other Good Guys? I think it's Good Guys. I think that's it. Yeah.
So here's my stance on movies like this, though. Like, I feel like we live in such a polarized world right now where it's like the movie's amazing or it's awful. And like, I'm very okay with like middle of the road. Like, yeah, movie's all right. You know, and we're hearing about some other big movies right around the corner that are getting pretty middle of the road reviews. And I'm like, I can enjoy that sort of thing. And maybe it's because I grew up watching like really bad movies, like on Mystery Science Theater and stuff, that I can appreciate both ends of the spectrum. But like, when I saw that, I was like, yeah, this does not. And I'll see this movie, and then like a year from now, I'll probably forget about it, but I'll enjoy it when I see it. That sort of thing. I'm always down for more sci-fi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, because the Predator and Alien by proxy have kind of had like a lot of ups and downs. You know, we'll talk about maybe that later, but it's kind of, for me, I don't really care about like, oh man, is the story like really solid and stuff. It's just exciting to see these characters hopefully get more of a budget and then like better special effects than they've ever gotten, hopefully, before. Sometimes the old practical effects are better, but we'll have to wait and see about this one. So yeah, we'll see. It might be whelming. I think it might. That's a good way to put it, man. Like, it's like, okay, it's fine. There's like not much to go off of right now.
A 7 out of 10, which is not a bad thing. You know, I think every movie's got its place. And like you said, I think we'll talk about it a little bit later. But if this keeps attention on the franchise so that maybe there's another one after that that's better, great. Or, you know, if it bombs horribly, it might kill the franchise. But like, give it a shot. Nothing to lose, I guess, except for other people's money.
Yeah,
so
that's so true. Yeah, but I do recommend anybody who's watching this, check out Predators. It was like the last Predator kind of movie to come out. It's very interesting, and it takes place off-world with a bunch of like bad humans put on a world where you don't need to know about the Predators so much. It's actually a pretty good movie. You should check it out. It's like pretty messed up.
You know what? I will say I'm starting to get into like revisiting franchises I should have been into in the past and never. I saw for the first time this Christmas Die Hard. Never had seen a single Die Hard film. And then after like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, always making jokes about it, I was like, I should get into this. I should check it out. And I saw it and I was like, decades missed that I could have been enjoying this film. So Predator's on there. Like, it's one of those franchises I need to get into.
Sure. Well, you know what? To be completely honest with you, Rob, I haven't seen Die Hard either. I saw Die Hard 4, I think, in theaters. And all I knew was like, oh, it's like he's Bruce Willis. He's kind of an angry man that can't die. Like, that's all he would do is like he like jumps on like an F-35 Lightning in that movie, which is like a jet. And like he blows that up somehow. And I'm like, whoa, Like, so I'm like, that's what these movies are, right? Just like this older guy who's just
Probably. I've only seen the first because here's the thing. The whole premise of the first is he's kind of trapped in this building during this hostage situation. And it's great because this is sort of like everyman cop who becomes the hero. But then when it was over, I was like, how did they make like 5 more of this? Like the whole premise is it's this out of the ordinary thing. And so I was like, maybe I just don't want to see the others. Maybe I want to, in my mind, imagine that it's just this one instance and that's it. And then the benefit of getting into these late is people could go, well, you could skip the second one, just jump right to the third one. You know, you don't need to see this one or that one, and then you get the best experience.
Dude, that's the best thing about it. Like like I said, we're talking about sagas later, but like you could just pick and choose, and then there's some people out there who are like, maybe they should have just made the one and never made another one again. It's like, well, I don't know. I know what you mean, but yeah. But anyway, speaking of sequels, I just have to say this because they announced it. Battlefield 5, that's what they're going to call it, the next Battlefield game.
Oh, yeah?
World War II, yeah. Apparently they changed their Twitter handle, so it's like a V now, and they're going to talk about it more next week, and they're going to show off some gameplay for it. So for people who are excited about Battlefield and who are sick and tired of us complaining about Battlefront, which is very different,
yeah.
which is like I wanted to talk to you about that for a second too. You take an IP, the biggest one potentially on the planet, the one that prints money, and you're like, how do we get more? How do we make people angry about it? And it's like, that's the way to do it. Like,
I could go on for hours about Disney-based or Disney-owned video game franchises because it is my biggest criticism with the Disney company, and I'm typically very biased towards them. But like, they have such a like timid approach to the whole industry, and I get it. Bob Iger is like a TV guy who became a movie guy, and so like video games is just a whole foreign landscape to them. But like, they don't understand, I think, that it's sort of the industry where you need to grow from it. Like, yeah, you're going to put out a game and it's not going to be a great game, but your team builds on that and then the next one's better. Imagine if the Assassin's Creed franchise died with the first game, which wasn't a bad game, but it also, I think, is arguably not close to their best game. But you know that like you can build off of that. And I think Disney's stance has always been like, they would put out a game, like Split Second was a cool example, and it didn't do that well. And then they just killed it. They're like, oh, well, this isn't an instant moneymaker like what we do in film and television and everything else. So we're just going to kill it. And now their new strategy is let's just farm it out to like an EA or whatever company that is willing to bid the lowest for it. And it's just like, you have the most prized like franchises and properties in the world. Imagine if you just dedicated like the actual time and resources to making amazing games about it. Like I said, I could go on for hours about like all of the mistakes they've made in the past about it. Needless to say, I'm willing to give everything they do for Star Wars a shot because I've been a fan my entire life, but like I'm also like not super, I don't have high hopes for it, I'll just say, you know.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, and you kind of like pivoting off that point, you know, they are making an Avengers video game. What would you want it to be if you got to pick?
Well, I mean, here I'm trying to think of two minds immediately, right? My first thought is like, what's realistic? Because I can ask for an Avengers game that sounds awesome. That is totally not reasonable. Where you have the different, I would love the idea where each hero has its own unique gameplay mechanisms that play into that strength of the hero. But I know that's probably a hard ask. So I think you would have to go with like this sort of single path where you pick one hero and you go, okay, we're going to tell this Avengers story through the lens of a Captain America or an Iron Man. Or what if they do something sort of like we had this whole phase of video gaming for a couple of years now that sort of, I think, has been tempered of these serialized video games, Telltale games where it's just episodic. What if it's an Avengers episodic where each episode kind of plays with the game mechanics? So the episode 1 is a Captain America and it's a brawling game. Episode 2 is like, maybe Hawkeye, or I don't know, somebody, maybe not Hawkeye, maybe somebody bigger, but like you introduce those other mechanics, flying with Iron Man, this and that, and then you get that same story told through different perspectives. But that would be a big investment. And again, I don't know if Disney is willing to do something like that. Yeah,
well, I know that I think Eidos Montreal is working on one. They teased one a while ago, and it kind of just showed like Captain America's shield on the ground, and Mjolnir like sitting off to the side, And as I would love it to be like some sort of 4-player co-op, like open world third person action game. I doubt it's going to be that,
That
but
would
it'd be
be so
great.
great. Yeah, that would be amazing, actually.
Yeah, like everybody wins. Like if you want to pick Thor, I'll just pick like Hulk or Iron Man. I'll just like fly around and you can fly, or we do whatever. Like it'd be great. Like
And it wouldn't be like totally groundbreaking. Like there have been, of course, I'm going to forget all the names of them in the past, but this is like before the cinematic universe. I remember there being games on like the Wii or that Wii era
okay.
of like that were Avengers games where it was a Marvel based sort of almost like a Diablo clone, I guess.
Oh yeah, you're talking about like the Ultimate Alliance games?
Yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah, those
mean,
games.
why not? Like, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping at the very least if because I feel like the big trap that you always see these movie tie-ins, and this I guess isn't going to be a strict movie tie-in, is that you need way more time to develop a good video game than you need to make a movie.
Yeah.
So they never have enough time, and then the games are always like subpar. I'm hoping rather than focusing on like the right gameplay mechanisms, maybe at least throw in the variety of locations and art styles. Like if there is a segment in the Avengers where it harkens back to Ragnarok and you have like these super colorful, locations and characters and stuff like that, or then you jump to, your Captain America, maybe you do like a flashback sequence and it's more of a 1940s,
Yes.
like play around
Yes.
with the aesthetic if you're not going to play around with the gameplay or, put all that effort into the scope of the game.
Rob,
That's
it's
the
beautiful.
least you could do. Yeah.
Yes, that's beautiful. I love that. That makes so much sense to me. And the other thing that they could do, because he's in Fortnite right now, what if you just make a Thanos video game and like, if you die, you get your time stone really early on or whatever, and you just reverse it in the game and you're collecting all the stones throughout the game and you're like, I'm playing as Thanos. Like
That would be an amazing. I think I love games that play with time, and
oh yeah, me too.
that is one where I'm like, yeah, Disney would not touch that one with the 10-foot pole because it would
Yeah.
take too much development time to do that in a good way. But like, yeah, there's just so much potential there. And especially if the Fox deal goes through and they end up getting their X-Men rights back, like I think back to what was it? The X-Men Origins Wolverine game was better than the movie.
Yes. Thank you. It's so good. It's one of the best movie tie-in games of all time in my eyes, because that game is like what you want Wolverine to be. Like,
yeah. And I remember I saw it at New York Comic Con before it came out, and one of the producers were there, and they said the reason why they thought it was going to do well is because they were just making a Wolverine game for years, and then the movie was like introduced and they tied it in. So it was one of those rare instances where they did have enough time to actually make a good video game and then just sort of slap on the movie skin to it, which is why it kind of bounced around. But that was such a great game. I would love to see something similar. Like if Disney's in the cinematic universe now, they've clearly invested. I think we'll see Marvel movies for the next 10 years. So you're going to be around. So like get a Captain America game working, even if it's a prototype. And then in 5 years, they're like, all right, we have the right Captain America, whatever they do with that character movie to tie it into, and then apply the skin so that the foundation's there. That would be fantastic.
yeah, I think a lot of it is them being afraid that a movie tie-in will kind of like be a waste of time and money. And I think what they're doing now, and Spider-Man's kind of like in its own weird, like it's Sony and stuff, but it sounds like they're trying to make these games that aren't tied to the movies necessarily, but tied to the characters that don't have to adhere to the film, which I think is probably a smart idea, because like you look back at, say, like if they made an Avengers game, how many fights would you really get to have in that game?
Yeah, that's a good point. And then you've got certain ones where I feel like looking back now, you look at like Age of Ultron, and I feel like that movie's going to be seen as not being like a low point necessarily, but just being, it didn't carry the same weight this new one has and the first one had. And so like, I'm sure you don't want a game that is just stuck to that because it is telling that story again. I will say this, and it's kind of a little bit of a diversion now that I'm thinking about it. I would love to see them do some games based on the Netflix shows. Like I want a Daredevil game or a Punisher game.
Yeah.
Luke Cage, Jessica Jones. Like those are ones where you could do something different, where like Jessica Jones more like a detective-esque. Luke Cage is more of your beat 'em up. And then, you've got your Punisher, which is just extremely gory shooting and stuff. So
yeah. Oh, that's a good idea, man. I kind of like that thought, because I know Punisher has been teased in other things. There was this old game because it was like Marvel, like Rise of the Imperfects or something, and they tease like Punisher, but he's not in the game. And I was like, well, would you put him like in a fighting game? Like it was like like an arena fighting game, and I was like, what did you do with that? But Punisher in like a third person action game, and like Daredevil, I think it could happen. It's just that I think a lot of people, even myself included, I've kind of like fallen out with like the Netflix stuff personally. Like it doesn't hold the same for me. Like Defenders should have been a big deal, and I remember watching it and being
Yeah.
kind of bored. I was like, "What? This should be like so cool." It's like Sigourney Weaver is a villain, and like it's like, nah, man, it's just
It didn't click. Yeah. I actually totally had forgotten about the other series. Was it Iron Fist? Because that was
oh
one
my
that I
god.
heard just it wasn't very good. I didn't really get into it. I got into like a bit of the first episode. And I wonder if part of that has to do with we know they're doing a streaming service starting next year. We know that those series aren't going over to it. So is it part of like, is Marvel not, I'm just going to say abandoning it, but maybe they're not giving it their all the way they would have if it was like a primary concern for them, which is a shame because I really liked specifically Daredevil and Punisher. I thought were great series, but they also veer in a very mature direction. So I also think Disney to an extent is like, we don't want to touch any of this because we don't want to, like they did their little cute references in the first seasons where they reference like the New York event, but I think that's it. I don't think you're ever going to see that sort of stuff again because it's just gotten too far into the mature direction that they don't want to imagine a world where like the Punisher and Captain America are in the same universe, even though they technically are.
Yeah.
Because it's just totally different in tone, you know?
No, I completely agree with that. And it'll be interesting to see. And I'm not sure with like Perlmutter and stuff like that. I've heard that like the guy who's running all their TV stuff is like kind of notorious for not like doing it the best way. I might be wrong on that if I don't really know about the top brass, but I would be interesting to see what happens with Netflix if this streaming service really kicks off the way they want it to, if they will completely abandon this. And then the question is, do you have this other stuff like the Runaways, like Inhumans, they said just was canceled. Like, will they do like an X-Men TV show if they can, you know? I don't know if they would ever try to do that. They'll do the movies, obviously, but like, would you do one set more so in the MCU now?
It's going to be real. I feel like regardless of how it goes, if this Fox deal closes, it's going to be real interesting just to see how do you handle these two. What are you going to reboot? Like how long until they touch Wolverine? Because he is now, I think, for generations tied to what's his face? Why am I blanking on his name all of a sudden? Hugh Jackman, yeah. And now that's sort of an era that comes to a close. So when do you bring him back into the mix? Like, oh, I wish I could be a fly in those meetings, fly on the wall in those meetings, just to be like, how do you talk about that stuff? Where do you like, you know, I don't know. It's that seems like a fun. There's going to be a book in like 20 years about this whole cinematic universe and Marvel and everything, and I can't wait to read it.
I can't wait to, dude. Let's just go there. Let's write it, man. Let's go there, right? We'll find a way to sneak in. It'll be fine. We'll Jessica Jones it. They will definitely won't notice us. But I guess the first thing is we just got to make sure Comcast doesn't ruin it. Because like I've heard those rumors them like coming in with a cash deal or something to take all that stuff. I was like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. That'll be another interesting. I mean, this is probably interesting to less people, but I love reading about that stuff and how it'll turn out in the end, just to see. Who knows how that's going to go.
Sure.
I guess we'll find out soon.
Yeah, last question about it. How do you feel about Kingpin and Daredevil? You like him?
I loved him.
I love him
the
too.
Actor, the character, just the presentation. He was more because I did see the show like maybe a year after the season came out. Like I was late to it, but I think that was around the middle of the cinematic universe, like around Avengers 2. So like I feel as far as villains go, he was probably the best. You always love a villain who thinks they're doing the right thing for the world and they're just not. And just I think he was fantastic. I just loved it.
Vincent D'Onofrio, the man, the myth, what I really wanted, and he talked about this, he said that he would love to be like to segue into the MCU because he would make for a perfect addition to Spider-Man, because although I know he's mature, we don't want to watch Tom Holland's head get bashed in with a car door, but I think it would be cool to watch just like this fit bald dude who looks like, he's just kind of like a big dude, and just like pick him up, you know, and just throw him around and stuff. Like that would be cool, and it'd be an interesting villain for like Peter to deal with, because Peter would be like, I can't just punch this guy. He's got thugs everywhere. Like he's got like clout, and I don't have clout. I'm just Spider-Man.
And it's a good direction to go in because, like, I mean, we have Thanos now. I don't want to talk spoilers. He's a very powerful villain, obviously. Where do you go from there? Like, how do you continue this cinematic universe? Is it just going to be this snowball effect where now, and you know, the third phase, you know, whenever that's ended, you have like this. You can't even become more omnipotent than, you know, omnipotent. You're omnipotent. You're omnipotent. So like, I think if they can focus it back down to smaller scale villains, because that also, I think, at least from a personal perspective, I find them scarier. I'm not afraid of like an actual Thanos coming around because I don't think that's going to happen. But like a local leader who's like abusing their power, or, like that's the sort of thing that could happen in real life, just to a less comic booky degree. So I would love to see more of that stuff happen. I wish we could see a whole wave of these movies where when it focuses on the singular heroes, it just kind of reduces the scale a little bit.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely going to get that, especially with Spider-Man Homecoming 2, which will kick off Phase 4 next July. And I think that's going to be the beginning. I think they're going to scale it back down. We look at Spider-Man Homecoming, and it's this kind of small high school tale with a villain who, by all, stretch of imagination in the MCU, is not that powerful. He's just under the radar. Like, the other big heroes are like, yeah, he's not that big of a threat right now. But, like, Spider-Man's like, this is my big threat, which is perfect. So I think that's what we're going to see hopefully in the next one, unless they go all Sinister Six, then I'll be like, wow, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
it's all a matter of perspective. I will say I did like Homecoming, and I did like was it Vulture?
Yeah.
He was like a blue collar villain.
I love it. Michael Keaton, man.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, the only thing they screwed up with is somebody put 8 years instead of 6 years or whatever it was.
Yeah,
like somewhere, and the Russos were like, yeah, someone who screwed up, we couldn't change it. We're sorry, everybody. Not that like most people, like I love the MCU, but I'm not sitting there with like a notepad during the movie and I'm like, all right, when does this take place? Yeah, I'll be like, this doesn't line up with Doctor Strange. Yeah. Oh my goodness, this is great. Okay, speaking of movies, and games and all these things, what if I told you that there was a movie based on a video game coming out? Monster Hunter World, starring Mila Jovovich.
Yeah.
Weird, right?
Directed by Paul Anderson, right? Not P.T. I confused the two. There are two directors, same exact name, almost same exact name. One of them is really great. One of them is, there's like Paul Anderson and Paul Thomas Anderson, right?
Yeah, it's her husband, the guy who's done, I think, like the other, Resident Evils and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I wanted to bring it up just briefly because I love Monster Hunter, but this seems
it's not Uwe Boll, so it can't be the worst, right? Like it's. I'm sure it'll. Here's the thing. I love when news like that comes out because I remember reading it when they announced it, and they're like, him, like the guy who did Resident Evil, how does he keep getting movies made? And it's like, because they do well. Like, yeah, it goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the episode. Like, yeah, there are just some movies, they're not like art, but they're entertaining enough that people are willing to see them. And personally, like, I'm not a huge fan of Monster Hunter, but like, I'm a big fan of just keep trying to throw the whole video game movie concept on the wall until something sticks. And sure, why not with Monster Hunter? Like, we'll see how it goes. I think as a director, I feel like when you pump out movies the way he did with like the Resident Evil films, it's at a point where it's like, I'm not expecting to see him grow as a filmmaker. It'll be consistent, and that'll be that. And, maybe fans will enjoy it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, though, is like the story. I'm pretty new to Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter World, I put so much time into, and I absolutely love it. But it's not because the story is super good. So I'm not sure, like, with a budget that I think is actually pretty small. I don't know if I heard this correctly. 60 million? I don't know. I could be way off on that, but it seems pretty low. And that just makes me nervous because a lot of the monsters are pretty fantastical. So it's like if you gave an Avatar budget, or something crazy like that, you'd be like, all right, cool, we can make every monster look incredible. So it's like, I hope that there's more to this than that. And I don't know.
And here's the thing, though. Monster Hunter is, I know it's big in Japan, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's huge.
I wonder how big is it? Is there any presence in China? Because I think from a business standpoint, 60 million, that doesn't give you a lot of room to play with in producing it. But on the same side, it at the very least reduces the sort of threshold it has to hit before it becomes profitable. And so like when I hear 60 million, I go, oh, well, it might not be great, but I bet it'll be profitable, especially if it's big over in Asia. So that the domestic will be fine, but the overseas box office will do well. And then we'll probably get another one. And maybe that one will be a little bit better, and maybe you just build it up rather than just putting, like, if it was an Avatar budget, I bet that would be the one time we see it,
That's very true. See, that's you're the level-headed person. I'm the dreamer here, but I think that's a good point because thinking about that now, I wonder if they're trying to capitalize on the success, obviously, of Monster Hunter World breaking into the West here. They've sold like at least more than 7.5 million copies. So I'm sure someone's thinking somewhere, okay, if we get every one of those people to see it, and then some more people to see it, right? Like the numbers speak for themselves, obviously. But you're right. If it does well in China, it's like Warcraft. Like Warcraft, you'd think like a prolific gaming franchise that should have done really well, but it also did super duper well, mostly in China. Like it didn't do super well here, but did really well in China. So we might get a
Right.
sequel because of that. So, which by the way, do you have a favorite video game movie, by the way?
Ooh, man. I mean, I guess that you could say I ironically love the Super Mario Brothers movie, right?
Okay, sure,
But
sure,
I'm
sure. I've only
sure
seen bits and
tons of
pieces.
people do. It's like it's more because again, Mystery Science Theater. I love really bad movies. I don't know if there's one that I like genuinely enjoy. I'm hearing about what is it like a multi-part Tetris film in the
Oh
works?
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't even know because I remember here it was like a 3 or 4 parts. It's like what? Like
But that's the thing. I want to see movies about the making of video games. I want to see more of those. I want to see a movie about Atari and Nolan Bushnell and, all of that stuff more than I would just want to see my favorite character on the screen. Yeah, coming to mind, I can't think of one where I'm like, yeah, this is better than the game or just as good as the game. I feel like that's the catch 22 is for it to be a good movie, it needs to step away from the game and then that becomes a bad adaptation. And then if it's a good adaptation, it becomes a bad movie. So I don't know.
yeah, I think, if I were to have said what's a movie that's based on video games that you love, the word you'd be searching for is Pixels. I know, I'm sure you're a huge Pixels fan, which
Oh,
by the way,
sure.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, there's a moment in there where I was like, I'm thinking about Pixels now, and I shouldn't be. I never saw Pixels, but I was like, you guys, why did you do that? Kills me. But yeah, hopefully Monster Hunter will be a good film. Like I said, I love the game, but we'll see. We'll see about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to talk about, a little bit of DC news. Everybody loves DC, DC EU, except it's not the EU, it's just DC Universe or whatever. Sounds like Man of Steel 2 is happening, which isn't a huge surprise. I think that's something that was going to happen, hopefully regardless, but I want to ask you how you feel about the first Man of Steel and what your hopes would be for the sequel.
I enjoyed it. I walked out of Man of Steel and Wonder Woman going, these movies were about as good as like the lower end Marvel. They're not bad movies, they were enjoyable movies. I don't think that about all the DC movies, but those two I did. I hope we see more optimism. Like that was, I know it was a common complaint, and so it might sound repetitive to say, but my bigger complaint with just Superman's portrayal in the universe so far is that he's very grim and serious and gritty. And I know they're trying to maybe step away from Marvel's like jokey attitude, but like part of why I love him as a superhero is that sort of endless optimism and that genuine nature to it. So I hope we see that. And I hope we just see a brighter, more colorful, and more optimistic Superman.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we got in Justice League, and that's why one of the reasons I liked that film a little bit more, even though I don't think it's like a great film. There were some of the characters where I thought, okay, we're finally getting there, where like Superman isn't frowning constantly, like he kind of enjoys doing this sort of thing. He's like, I
Right.
love saving humanity. It's great. So more of that would be good as opposed to him just being like a Batman versus Superman. I just remember this scene where he's floating away from Lois and he's like, I just have to go, and he's like so sad and frowny. He's flying away, and you're like, you're flying away. Superman doesn't usually frown while he flies away. He's like, here we go. Like
Exactly. And it's part of it is I think is the escapism where you go, well, man, imagine if I were Superman. Like I think a lot of people who watch these movies, they think, what if I were in that position? And like, yeah, I like the idea of introducing all of the conflict that comes with being a superhero, but there's still an element of like, this is a fun thing to do, which is something that I think like Iron Man captures really well, which is like, yeah, he still has his moments where he's like, oh, I have this responsibility. And I think Spider-Man's another great example, but I'm still going to enjoy that I'm flying around or swinging around or I have these powers. And I would love to see something like that out of a Superman. I don't want to see that out of like a Batman. Different characters have their different sort of personalities, but I feel like with DC, they were just trying to like so far to stay away from Marvel's image that they kind of siphoned all the characters into this one personality. And now they have hopefully the opportunity to split them up. I'm also interested in like, I don't know, was there news on who's going to direct it?
I'm not sure exactly who's going to direct it because I would imagine Zack Snyder. I think there was talk a while ago that he had been actually let go or fired as opposed to him leaving, but because of his kind of family tragedy and all this weird stuff and Joss Whedon coming in. So it's not going to be him. I'm not sure who the director is right now. But, I don't know. Another thing I was thinking about too, we're talking about Kingpin and villains who think they're doing the right thing. Zod might be one of my favorite DC villains right now because he he's like, I'm
Oh,
doing this for Krypton. He's like, I have to be a bad guy to save everybody. And you don't get that, but like, this is what I was like bred to do that. And
yeah.
I really liked his portrayal in that movie. I was like, I get it, Zod. I get you. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
That's
That makes sense.
and it's so weird because it seems to be like the simplest key to a good villain
Yeah.
that a lot of movies miss, which is just like give them a reason. Like just give them something beyond just I want to control the universe or the world or whatever. Just give them some sort of, and it doesn't always have to necessarily be like family tragedy of like, I'm getting revenge. It's but give them some sort of reason because, it makes them more human even if they're not human, and then we connect more.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
And it also sounds like, speaking of directors, though, Peter Jackson might be circling a DC movie. I don't think it's going to be Man of Steel.
What?
This is what, like, one of the rumors is that he's either looking at that or potentially working with Weta to go back and work on that Lord of the Rings TV show for Amazon.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know, which is kind of nuts because it's like after The Hobbit, which I'm sure we'll probably mention later. It's crazy to think that he would entertain the idea, but after so many films, I feel like there's probably part of him and some of the other cast members or the crew that think like they kind of have an ownership of it. And it might be hard to like be like, all right, someone else do this. But at the same time, a Peter Jackson DC movie, I don't know who he'd go after. Probably something weird, like Swamp Thing or something like that,
I would have a lot more faith in whatever it is. Like that's a director choice where it's like I don't care who the character is, I'll go see it because it's Peter Jackson. I'm surprised. Like with I think back for some reason to Indiana Jones, where I know Temple of Doom had gotten, poor reviews compared to the first one. And Spielberg later said that he did Last Crusade because he felt like he owed it to audiences to try and make up for Temple of Doom. So when you were talking about him potentially doing this show for Amazon, I'm like, is it a little bit of that? Like, you don't want to go off on a down note. But I would love to see him do other stuff. Not that, Lord of the Rings was an amazing trilogy. Hobbit, admittedly, I have not seen all of them, which I think speaks to that a little bit. But, he's a great filmmaker. I want to see what else he could do with different genres and characters and stuff like that.
Cool. That's man, that's exactly how I feel too. That makes a lot of sense. And I've been thinking about Indiana Jones a lot lately, especially them talking about Indiana 5 and stuff like that. Yeah, we'll see how that all shakes out because it's kind of a weird. I feel like Spielberg is just going to be like making Indiana Jones for the rest of his life. Like he's going to do like the one that people like, and then he's like, well, we'll do one more, see how it goes. People hate it, and then he's like, I got to redeem myself. I'll come back and do it again. It's like, oh gosh, like poor guy.
We'll see how that goes. On Man of Steel, it'll never happen because he's part of the Disney family. But I think if Brad Bird took a shot at it, especially because Tomorrowland flopped, and that I could go on about that movie and why I think it flopped, but I think he's got a sense of optimism and he can handle effects and sort of dealing with these fantastical worlds in a way that I would be interested in seeing what he did with it.
Rob, you speak to my heart. Brad Bird is one of my favorites. I absolutely love him. Incredibles. I was sitting next to some older guys on my third viewing of Infinity War, and the Incredibles 2 trailer comes on. They're doing that bit where Rob's trying to teach Dash about math. He's like, why would they change math? These two old guys are just loving it. They're like, this is perfect. And then like Ghost Protocol, Mission Impossible 4.
Yeah.
So good.
It was great.
Oh, it's so good. Brad Bird is, and like Tomorrowland, I just recently watched it. I get where you and I could probably talk about like who is it made for, and it's kind of all over the place. But that's like there's cool concepts. Like the guy's a good director.
I think for what it was, I thought it was a good film. I thought it was marketed horribly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it fell apart is they sold it as from the creators of Lost. And here's this mysterious, what is Tomorrowland? And it's like, well, Tomorrowland's actually just like a really fun kind of shallow kid adventure. And if you sold it like that, I bet more kids would have gone to seen it and you would have made more money. But instead they went that whole like, what is the mystery behind it? And there was none. And yeah, it's a shame because it wasn't the movie. It was just everything outside the movie.
I completely agree because I remember thinking, with a lot of trailers, they kind of give a lot away. So you can kind of get a feel for what the movie's going to be. I remember seeing that trailer a lot and thinking, man, I want to see that. But I have absolutely no idea what it's about.
Exactly. And everyone at first was like, this is great. I'm going to go in blind. But I think it was a great example of why, to an extent, you have to market a movie a certain way because otherwise you're just not going to get the right audience.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for the sequel, Frontierland. I think it's going to be really great. Apparently, Westworld is all angry about that, but Disney's like, we're doing it because we're Disney. That would be incredible. Now that I think about it, you're welcome, Bob. You're
There was
welcome.
talk a long time ago of them doing a Big Thunder Mountain Railroad television show, and there's a comic book series. It was like a graphic novel, so it was a limited run that like adds context and backstory and all these characters to Big Thunder Mountain. I was like, yeah, this would be awesome. I hope we see stuff like that with their new streaming service.
Yep. I
But
think we will, especially after
hopefully,
they're going back to that well, that amazing well of where Pirates and Haunted Mansion made the best films. I mean, Jungle Cruise is getting a film. The Rock loves the jungle for some odd reason. He just can't stop making jungle movies. Loves it so much. I'm like, man, I can't wait for the Tomorrowland Transit Authority, the People Mover ride, the movie. Like it'll just be like, oh, look at this, these kind of moving booths. Like, look at this, pretty
it'll be
sweet.
the first Disney movie targeted towards like the elderly. It'll be very, very slow paced. Just all about the bureaucracy of a transit authority.
Yep, and then the follow-up Small World, the horror film. It's going to be really crazy. People are like, why is it rated R? It's like from the directors of Annabelle. Like just bring them right in. I can't wait for it.
Oh, for sure.
Well, we were kind of, we've been hinting at, sagas a little bit here today, and I thought I want to talk to someone who really, loves these types of things like I do, and can talk about the high points and the low points of various film sagas. And with Star Wars and Marvel being so prevalent, especially right now when we're recording this, it's easy to kind of think, okay, what's the best? What's the worst? What should I avoid? Things like that. So, Rob, maybe we should just kind of, softball it here for you personally. Like what, would you say is maybe like a high point for either Star Wars or Marvel for you that you love?
My high point, I would actually say, is right now. And it's funny because I do think it shows how subjective it is, because I think for a lot of people out there, this is the low point where they're going, oh, it's annualized. They're just pumping these out. And, a lot of people didn't like The Last Jedi. And it's just, now we're getting sort of mediocre reviews for Solo. And people are thinking like this was taking something that was once special and treasured and now just turning it into another product. Whereas like I'm coming from the angle of like, yes, make as many of them as you want. Some of them are going to be awful and some are going to be amazing. And the more you make, the more opportunity for either is out there. And I'll take them all, because I have very much come from this direction of like, well, if I don't like the movie, I just don't watch it again. And it doesn't soil the saga for me. My low point personally, I don't want to say was the prequels, because I actually was like very invested in them when they were coming out. I'd say it was when I was in college and I rewatched the prequels for the first time, not from the perspective of like, oh my God, it's the first Star Wars in like 20 years. And I was like, oh, well, they're not great movies. They're great Star Wars tales, but not great movies. And it's funny that this was the topic this week, because in preparation for Solo, I was like, you know what? I'm in a Star Wars mood. I want to watch all of them. I'm going to do one a day, and I'm just going to go through all of them. It's been ages since I've seen 1 through 3. Why not? And I got about 2/3 through episode 1, and I just turned it off because I wasn't interested. And I was like, this is sad, because 15 years ago, I was a diehard Star Wars fan, and I would have defended everything they'd done short of like the Christmas special. And maybe that was kind of a low point for me. But like right now, this is a high point. It's like, yeah, give me a Han Solo movie, give me a Boba Fett and an Obi-Wan movie. Like I'll take them all. It's 2 hours every year to year and a half. It's not like it costs me a whole lot to give it a shot. And worst cases, it's just a bad movie I don't watch again, So
Yeah. Well, and I think Mark Hamill talked about this recently. He said it with, I think it was either Force Awakens or Last Jedi, but he said like, this movie in here on like the red carpet, he's like, this isn't going to get your childhood back. He's like, this isn't going to be us recapturing your childhood. It's moving forward. It's going to make people angry. And maybe they did stuff that he didn't want or what we didn't want or whatever, but at least it still exists. That's what I think. It's like, you know what? If you want, you could just watch 4, 5, and 6, and you could just be like, that's it. That's Star Wars for me,
Exactly. It's and I feel like that's the healthiest outlook on the whole thing, because, to have too harsh of a stance of like, well, you've ruined my childhood because this movie is not what I wanted. You're building up this case for studios to not even bother trying at that point. And I'd rather them try and fail than, it'd be a different story if they were like kickstarting this and it's like my money going into whether this movie's good or not, but it's not. It's my $10 to go see the film, and that's about it. So I'm glad they're making more of it. I can't imagine a version of like 15-year-old me where I would have been like, no, never mind. I don't want to see a new Star Wars every year because I'm afraid a couple of them might be bad. just go with it. And I think that's going to wear off, because we don't see that with the Avengers and Marvel. You don't see people going, well, they've ruined Marvel, because it kind of started right off the bat as the cinematic universe that they were pumping out films for. I mean, kind of ramped up, but because it had that speed all along, that's just part of what it was. Star Wars, you had a trilogy, and then you had a couple of decades, and then you had another trilogy, and then you had another like decade and a half. And so it isn't full speed yet. And I think once it does, and the kids now who are like 10 or 12 in 10 years, when they're in their 20s, it'll just be normal to have like, oh, what's the new Star Wars coming out? And it won't bother them as much.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And that's the same thought I have, because so many people are just so like, man, like I really love just like the original trilogy, and they've kind of ruined it. But then when I talk to them, it's like, yeah, because they like grew up either watching that or seeing it in the theater, like when it first came out. So it's like, yeah, these movies aren't going to be that. And I know it's going to be different. I didn't have that same connection that you did. So I'm just excited to see what other stories they'll tell. And I think Rogue One is a really good example of that. It is a story that is about the war part of Star Wars. It's like a small thing that has like big consequences, and it's like a one and done. It's like, here it is and here it's gone. Like if you don't like it, that's all right. These people, you're not going to have to deal with them very often or whatever, but like, it's like, there you go.
And there is a middle of the road there where I'm not going to sit here and pretend that like Rogue One or Solo, when it comes out, are going to be like the second coming of Star Wars. Like, I'll admit, I've seen Rogue One a couple of times. I own it on Blu-ray, but it's not like, oh, classic movie night, let me toss on Rogue One. It's just another movie, but like, that's okay. I don't need every Star Wars to be a masterpiece, because God knows there's 3 that came out, 1 through 3 weren't, and I still managed to enjoy them at the time. And they're in the same boat where now I don't really want to watch them as much, but I enjoyed them when they came out. They were good in my mind because I was a big fan, and I moved on from it. So like, I hope we see them expand even more and do, like, I know they're working on live action shows for the streaming service, and I'm okay with that happening with franchises. I think you see more of this extreme polarized viewpoint when it's like almost like peppered, like sprinkled on. Like with Star Wars, you're getting it every year. Marvel, you're getting it every year. But like, think about Terminator. You get one like what, every 5 years or something, and then when it's bad, it's like, well, all right, well, now we got to wait another 5 years to see if the next time they try this, if it's going to be good or not. Star Wars, it's like, all right, well, I'll wait another 12 months and see if the next one's better.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a really good point. I will still make a case that you should watch. I know a lot of people don't like it, but episode 3 is not that bad. It's the best of the prequels, and it's got some good stuff.
Sure.
There's good stuff in there.
I always maintain that like the prequels were great from a plot and sort of lore perspective, and it was just Lucas's weakness in writing dialogue really shined, and it was like the trilogy that highlighted what happens when you have nobody looking down and telling you no when it comes to doing certain things. And from that perspective, that's why it's like, I'll read the books about that era, or I'll play the games, or I'll just like, I love learning about, parts of Coruscant and stuff like that. But then when it comes down to like watching the scenes, I'm like, I don't need to watch this. And the different movies do different things. It's funny because thinking about just the sequel trilogy, my thoughts on Force Awakens and Last Jedi are opposite, where Force Awakens, I thought its flaws were in the grand scheme of the film and the ideas, but the moment to moment was so fun and entertaining that I didn't care. Whereas with The Last Jedi, I love the grand ideas, and there were just little moments, moment to moment, that I was like, I wouldn't have done it that way. And so, even within a trilogy, it could vary wildly. And so, I don't know. It's one of those things. Maybe it is a little writing it off, but at the end of the day, it's like, they're movies. I don't need to invest myself so much into them that like I think an entire franchise is ruined just because of a bad movie out there. So it makes those lows a lot easier to swallow.
That's cool. That's a good point. Which, that the way you phrased The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, I think that's kind of how I feel about it too. Whereas I feel like the weak points for me about Force Awakens were it felt almost too familiar. Like there's a lot of things in Star Wars that feel familiar, but when you're sitting there and it just feels like the same plot, and even Han Solo even comments on it at one point, you're like, yeah, you're right. Why are we doing this? Like, I get we're trying to like kind of refresh everybody. It's kind of like cleansing the palate. Like this was the fresh glass of water after the prequels, which if the prequels were made today, might be very different because they wouldn't be so focused on the CG and all that stuff. Because a lot of movies, I think, at that time fall prey to being like, oh, we got to be like the high def cutting edge, you know, and it's like, oh, everything's on a green screen. And nowadays we're like, yeah, we can tell. But back in the day, it was like, it wasn't as harsh, maybe. Like we're just like, oh, you know, it's cool. But speaking side note, one of the best movie game tie-ins besides Wolverine, Revenge of the Sith. Check it out. Really fun third-person action game, and it's got some co-op in it too. And it has a secret special ending if it went a different way, which is really weird.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you want to, I can always send that to you on YouTube. But
yeah, I wonder how that ties into. I don't know if you ever played The Force Unleashed.
Yes, I have. I played a lot of that.
I when that came out, I walked away going, that should have been episode 3. Episode 3 should have been episode 2. Episode 2 maybe make some sort of mix of 1 and 2 together and do something with that. But like, I thought the story in Force Awakens was like, could have been a movie, just the way. I don't know. Is it okay to spoil a game that's like 10 years old at this
Force
point?
Unleashed? Yeah, I think Force Unleashed people don't care. Yeah.
It gives a narrative explanation for how the rebellion was formed, and it's sort of like this failed plot to trap all of these separate rebels by like, you know, was it like the Emperor and Vader were trying to essentially undercover create a rebellion so they could smash it all at once, and then they failed, and then they had an actual rebellion. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, that whole concept would have been great for a movie, and you know, it wasn't, but I guess that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yep, exactly.
And now I guess it's not canon now.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think when they refreshed all that got thrown away, which I don't know. It was always like, with Star Wars, they always had, like, now it's Legends continuity, but they had so many things in there that were like, is this even canon? Like, everything they're putting out, you're like, really? You're like, is Chewie really getting smashed by a moon? Like, is that going to happen in a movie? Like, you're like, come on now. So, yeah, I don't think so. Like, Force Unleashed 2, they're like, all right, we're doing clones now, and you got 2 lightsabers. And I'm like, okay, guys, all right, everybody, just back off a little bit.
That thing goes on sale on Steam, like, every year, and the price gets lower every year. And every year I go, like, I'll get it next sale when it's even cheaper. And now it's like $3, and I'm like, I don't know if I want it for $3 at this point. I was okay with just the first game.
I pulled the trigger on it last year just because I played the heck out of that first one. I played it 4 times through all the difficulties just to see, because I was like, okay, I like this game a lot, and I can just like turn off my brain, and I like the physics in it, but like they kind of scaled back on the physics, and it was more like about dismemberment this time around, and you know, that kind of thing. And I was like, it's fine. So if you get to like $1 or $2,
one of these days I'm gonna just pull the trigger on it and get it.
I'll give you $3. I'll be like, here, just do it. Just let me know what you think about it, man. I'll be like, it's fine.
Every May 4th they do their May 4th sales, and I'm just like, next time.
You're like waiting for them to give it to you to like give you money. Like, here's the game and $5, and you're like, I guess,
maybe.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, get like a little lightsaber churro and just eat it while you're playing. Force Unleashed, man. But is there any like movie in Star Wars right now that you still go to for you personally that's like a high point for you? Because you're saying it's a high kind of now for the whole thing together, or at least for Marvel too. But like, is there any movie specifically that you go back to?
A lot of people I know hold up Empire as the best Star Wars, and I do think it is one of the best. I am a big fan of Return of the Jedi, even though I know like a lot of people don't like the Ewok stuff, and I like the message behind it and how, you know, it's kind of like almost like a Vietnam parallel of you don't have to be the most high tech to win.
Yeah.
But like, for me, the part that I remember when I think of all my childhood memories and I go back and watch that movie is everything that happens on the second Death Star, and just the music and that lightsaber battle in my mind is one of, if not the best lightsaber battle in the Star Wars franchise, just because of the emotion behind it and all of the points and the musical cues and everything. And like, to me, when I think of Star Wars, that's what I picture. I picture Luke on the Death Star, you know, the glove on his hand and the green lightsaber and just wailing on Vader. Like, that's Star Wars to me. So yeah, that's where I go.
Dude, that's great. I also love it started there, but Luke doing like a backflip. He kind of flips a little bit more in Return of the Jedi, which probably led to more flipping in the prequels. But I love that he jumps up there and Vader kind of like haphazardly throws his lightsaber. He's like, he's like, whatever. Yeah, exactly. Like his throw debris in Empire Strikes Back. He's like, you know what? I'm done playing by the rules. I'm just gonna start doing whatever I want. I'm Lord Vader, baby. Yeah, man, that's good. I know a lot of people, you're right, they have like problems with the Ewoks or whatever. I don't know.
And I get it. I do think to an extent, after I've read like a couple of biographies on Lucas, and I don't put it past the idea that it was just a marketing thing, like to sell toys. but it didn't pull me out of the movie too much. And we saw it in the prequels, or we're even seeing it now with like things like the porgs and stuff. So I think, yeah, that's just that moment. That, and I will say in episode 4, even today, having watched this franchise for like 20 plus years, when he's doing that final run and down the trench and it's like about to blow up, like I'm on the edge of my seat every time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, man, I agree. It's just like when I saw Poe Dameron doing like the same thing in episode 7, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm like, it's fine, but like when the music kicks and stuff, or they play that music in, spoiler alert, in 8, they do play the trench run music for a little bit, and I'm like, it's cool to hear that again, but I'm like, I'm getting weird emotions. Like,
there are a lot of those parallels when they're going in Crate in the cavern. It plays the same music when they're going through the asteroid field in Empire, and all these like music triggers that have also been burned into my brain because I played Star Wars Galaxies for 3 years, and so there are certain tracks that I have heard for hundreds of hours at this point. And so it like triggers like a Pavlovian response whenever I hear them now. I'm like, oh, I'm fighting in Star Wars Galaxies. But like, I love stuff like that. I mean, there are moments I totally teared up in Force Awakens, and it's just all fluid because I don't think that'll necessarily be the case in 20 years from now. Probably the Force Awakens won't give me the same emotional reaction, but in the moment, hearing the music cues when like the lightsaber goes into Rey's hand and stuff, it's just like, I don't know. It's so much easier for me to love parts of a franchise than to hate it. And so I'm like, the more you can put out there, the better. Just
yeah,
give me
man.
more.
I just like, my thing is like, at least we're getting it. That's what I keep telling people. And some people are like, no, we don't want like garbage. I'd rather have nothing but garbage. I'm like, I'd
Then
rather have something.
nothing. Don't watch it. Like,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
my stance. Like, then just don't go,
Yeah, no, there's not like Disney's not coming to your house and they're like, all right, get in the car. We're gonna go see the movie. And you're like, no, you can just not see it. It's fine.
The common argument I hear people make, which I think to a degree might be worth standing by, is that, well, if they didn't make it, that money would go to another film. So you're losing the opportunity of another film. But this is Disney. Like, they're not going to put it into like some thoughtful indie art project. Like, they're going to put it into another franchise tentpole film. It just might be another Marvel movie or some other franchise, or who knows, maybe it'll be, we'll see what they do if they own Avatar now. So it's going to go into something like that. I'd rather go into a franchise I love.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I tell people, I'm like, it's a business too. And guess what? Everything you love, it's a cash grab. Like, eventually it becomes a cash grab. And at first it maybe wasn't. Like, when like George Lucas was making Star Wars, he probably wasn't thinking like, sweet, it's going to make like all the money and it's going to make me like the greatest person on the planet. But like now it's just like, yeah, they're remaking these things and changing them. So like, they make Force Awakens for all the people who loved it back in the day. And they're like, oh, there's some people who really hated that. Let's take it and completely flip the script in 8. And it's like, we'll piss off other people, but everybody's going to see it,
And also, I recognize I'm not the core audience anymore. Like, the Star Wars is not like some niche sci-fi IP that only a few people have heard of. It's like, it is a worldwide phenomenon. And so I recognize that when they make movies, they're making it for them. They're not making it for like the person who's on Wikipedia and knows all the backstories. That's the minority now.
Yeah.
And from the business perspective, like you said, like, I think it's acceptable that they're not catering to that small minority. They're catering to the general audiences. And so that's why I'm fine with sort of the direction that Disney's been taking it. And, I think we'll see that happen if they do get Fox. I'm really interested in seeing, what are they going to do with Alien? What are they going to do with Avatar? They're going to have all these other franchises now. And are they going to take it in that same direction where they go, let's make this new, take what people remember loving about it, but make it more accessible to general audiences and put it out there.
Yep, AVP universe is coming back, everybody. We're gonna have the alien, the xenomorph, and the predator are gonna team up. They're gonna do some cute little fist bump. They're gonna fight, the Terminator or something eventually. It's gonna be great. Everybody's gonna love it. Yeah, I wonder what they will do with all that. That is an interesting thing. And with Avatar, I wonder if this was always kind of maybe hopefully a plan, because putting Pandora into the parks, which we don't need to talk about too much, but like that being there and now them getting Avatar, it's kind of like, well, that works. That might work out really well for you guys. Just saying, looks like.
I think it's part of it. I think Disney, at least in the parks, they're not their mandate, but their MO is they want as little non-Disney owned IP as possible in there. We've seen they used to have a whole bunch of that stuff, and now they're just acquiring everything or getting rid of everything. And now we're down to 2 rides in Disney World that aren't based on Disney properties. And I bet those are going to change soon too. But I could totally, it's funny. One of the biggest questions people asked when they made Pandora was why? Like, why Avatar? But I think a lot of people don't remember that when Avatar came out, this was before Lucas sold Star Wars. So as far as we knew, Star Wars was kind of over. There were no plans for any extra movies. So I think Disney was looking at that going, this is the next Star Wars, #1 box office. They got sequels and sequels planned. It's got this whole lore. I think they were looking at that going, yeah, this is the next Star Wars. And then instead they just bought the actual Star Wars. And so now this could be that palate cleanser when people get fatigued with Star Wars, where we go, well, now Star Wars is an every 2 or every 3 year franchise. And in between, we'll throw in your Avatar and your Aliens, and you'll get your sci-fi fix that way.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that I remember hearing a statement a while ago from Disney saying that they were thinking like keeping the episodes, maybe like a 5 or 10 year gap between trilogies, and then maybe releasing kind of like the offshots, once a year, once every other year, or something like that, which I think is a smart idea, because what they were worried about is that people would start getting that like franchise fatigue. Like some people say that with Marvel, which the box office clearly doesn't show. But,
yeah, right.
They're like, oh man, I'm so sick and tired of superheroes, except they're like always crushing records. But they're like, we want these Star Wars trilogies to like mean something. We don't want it to be like right after all the events of 7, 8, 9, we go right into 10, like the next year. Like, just like give it time, which I think is smart, I think that's good.
And I think they're going to be in a position right now where they can learn from Marvel to set up the future of Star Wars in a way that is going to work out for them. I think the reason Marvel has withstood a decade without people really being fatigued is you watch Thor Ragnarok and Captain America and Black Panther, and they feel like different movies, and they have their different styles. And right now, what we know of Star Wars, minus Rogue One, is this Jedi saga about the Skywalkers, and that's all it's ever been. So they need to put themselves in a position where they say, look, there's way more to Star Wars. And people have thrown this out as what they want to see, but like, I would love to see an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie that is styled like a Western. I would love to see a, Boba Fett movie that feels more like a film noir and it's darker. Like, use different genres, use different aesthetics and characters to make sure that even though there's a Star Wars movie every single year, it's not the same thing every single year. And so you can pick and choose what you love and keep it fresh and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think, and especially specifically talking about Obi-Wan, that's ramping up. So I'm excited to see what that turns out to be, because I would say if someone said, all right, Jimmy, like why do you like the prequels at all? Like what's one thing? And I could say the one through line for me is Ewan McGregor. I freaking love him as Obi-Wan. Young Obi-Wan is so great, especially in 3. He's like the pure Jedi, but also he's totally cool making a joke or saying something kind of like kind of smarmy, because he's like, yeah, I'm a powerful Jedi. He's like, but yeah, that's just who I am. And I'm like,
and I kind of heard he took the Harrison Ford route of like, he got directing notes from Lucas, but he just kind of did his own thing, because Lucas doesn't direct in a very emotive way. So he was just like, I'll add this on. And that's kind of why in like episode 4, Han Solo's like, I feel like the most charismatic character out of the entire film, because he just like, if you're not going to direct this character into it, I'll do it. And then just does it on his own. So I would love to see that. And I would love to, but I want to see them really commit to like style. Like, sure. I don't want them to make, and they're doing it with Marvel. Like part of what I loved with just these latest batch of Marvel films is you saw this sort of like just unique style with Guardians 2 and then Thor Ragnarok and then Black Panther. And it was almost to the point where I will say I'm a little worried about Ant-Man and the Wasp, because that one feels like an older Marvel movie where it's kind of just flat and a little bit more generic, whereas all these others are like, well, we're going to take this 80s vibe to it, or like this high-tech feel to it. So like I hope they do that. I hope they do that and just really play with getting different directors, different styles, and making it a very unique and varied franchise.
Yeah, and I think, looking at something like Black Panther, which I would say, if you actually look at it a little bit, it is kind of a generic Marvel film, but because we're in a new place with a brand new cast and all this stuff, it makes it feel fresh. It doesn't feel like the old school Marvel stuff. But when you look at like the villain versus the hero, especially the villain having like the same powers and stuff, it's because you have like a different cast, a different villain that like actually people like and understand and has a good like moral point of view, even though he doesn't kind of tackle it the right way. I think that's what got people really excited about it. And Thor, I'm a little nervous though, because like with Thor, it feels like it's so with Ragnarok, because Dark World didn't do very well and people don't speak highly of the Thor trilogy besides that last one, is that it takes a lot of cues from Guardians, and it feels like when I'm watching it, I get that whole like life is not life strange Stranger Things vibe. Like I get like they're playing like the synths and stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
which I hope it doesn't like all turn into that. Like I don't want the entire MCU to be like, when they're
Agree.
in space, it's always like that. Like give me what's Winter Soldier like kind of in space, not like the character, but like what's the Russo? And they
Right.
kind of tackle that with Infinity War, which I appreciate. They have like a nod to it here and there of kind of like that Guardian style, but I like the serious tone still too. That's one of the things I love so much.
You just said that, and I wonder, did they know going into it that they'd keep the similar vibe between Guardians and Ragnarok, knowing that in Infinity War they would be meeting each other first and they would be the first connective tissue?
Oh,
Like, does that
maybe.
help it? Maybe I'm giving them too much credit, and it's just a happy coincidence. But like, that's just what I instantly thought of, is like maybe it was just like they knew that those worlds were about to cross, so they needed to like level off how they were in tone. It would be they didn't want to, maybe they didn't want to be as jarring as, can you imagine if like Captain America and Punisher met?
Yeah.
How would you arrange that in a way that doesn't feel wildly jarring for one or the other? Find that middle ground there. But I don't know. Maybe it's just coincidence.
Well, I remember hearing something about Ragnarok, and they said that like for Sakaar, like the space stuff, that they were like, well, Guardians has already informed us as like what space is like in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so we're just doing that. So like that's just what it's going to be like. So maybe in a way they did kind of do that, but that makes a lot of sense, man. That makes me feel slightly better about it. But
But I agree with you. Like, I hope they don't just lean into it too much. Too much of a good thing is, not a good thing. So
yeah, but right now we'd say probably, maybe not the films specifically, but a lot of the Marvel stuff, it seems like it's crescendoing. It is maybe at the highest point that it ever has been right now, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, 100. I think we are at the height of the Marvel saga. It's funny. Maybe it's because I'm less invested. Like, I don't have a childhood history with Marvel comics, that I can't pinpoint what I thought their low point was, or if they maybe. I mean, if you think about it, at any point there's got to be a low point. Maybe it was Age of Ultron for just being kind of forgettable. But if that's their low point, like, that's, most franchises would love for that to have a low point that successful. I think they are at their height right now, and I do not envy them after the next part comes out and they have to go, what do we do after this? Like, where do we go from here?
Yeah, I feel like, when I think back to maybe Iron Man 2, a lot of people just called that kind of like setting up for, the Avengers and stuff like that, or maybe Thor the Dark World, or like, but there's only like maybe one movie that might be a low point, which is
Right.
still like a solid film. It's okay. That is like leading into another one, or another one's about to come out that's just way better and people love.
That's the thing. Maybe you don't get much of a low point just because the turnaround's so fast that it's like you don't have time to focus on it being a low point, because that moment of redemption's right around the corner in 6 months or whatever when the next movie comes out. It's not like you were mentioning before, like the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. It's not like, well, Hobbit people had a lot of problems with, but we're getting the next movie in a year. We'll see how that goes. It's like, nope, you just get to digest the Hobbit for a couple of years now.
Yeah, which was a good one to bring up, because I think of like Lord of the Rings being out in the early 2000s, 2001, 2, and 3, respectively, and then kind of getting The Hobbit. And I remember, this is kind of the allegory or the metaphor, or just like the synonym I could draw to people who have problems with Star Wars. Lord of the Rings was like my Star Wars. Like I grew up with that. Like that movie, those movies still move me, and they're emotional, beautiful masterpieces to me. When they
Yeah.
came out with The Hobbit, even though they weren't like perfect by any stretch, I was just happy to be back. I was just like, cool, I'm back in Middle Earth. It's not great, but I'm happy to be here for the point, like the small moments that I really love. Like that's how that worked for me.
Yeah. I feel like it almost pushes film into like these dual classification of like, there's movies as they exist over a long period of time, and then just movies in the moment of when they come out.
Yeah.
And I find it really hard to hate a movie when it comes out, because its one goal is to entertain me for like 2.5 hours. And most of the time it'll do that. Now, that doesn't mean that movie's going to, be as entertaining 15 years from now, but that's something, I cross that bridge 15 years later when I'm deciding if I want to watch it again. So I feel like a movie can almost at the same time be successful and a failure in one way or another. So And I guess it just happens sometimes with franchise films. The Terminator is one where,
Yeah.
Terminator and Alien are two franchises where I feel like they peaked early and then it's just been trying to dig themselves up. And there are times where I'm like, just give it up. But, that'd be pretty hypocritical of me. So like, I'm like, yeah, give it a shot. But maybe part of what disappoints me with some of them is they don't try different enough stuff to redeem themselves. They just go, well, we'll try it again. Like, isn't Arnold coming back for the next Transformers? Like, or are they getting somebody else? And
for Terminator, you mean?
Sorry, Transformers. Wow.
I was gonna say, really? I was like, I must have missed something in those movies. Like,
sorry. There's another one. Like the Transformers. Not to go out. Like the first one, I actually found really enjoyable, and the second one, I kind of remember enjoying. But because it didn't grow or change or do anything wildly different, I was just like, okay, I'm done. Like, but Terminator, yes, Terminator is one where like maybe you just need to take a wildly different approach to how you look at this franchise, because if you're just you're trying to recapture that Terminator nostalgia, it's not going to work. You need to do something different.
Yeah, and another problem that they had with the last one, I think, was Genesis, maybe, but the marketing. They showed one of the biggest kind of like plot points in it, and it was like, this would be such a crazy moment. And to kind of compare it to people who don't know about Terminator, it's kind of like if they were to show like a Star Wars trailer that was featuring Luke, like an older Luke, and he had a red lightsaber, and he turned into a Sith. And you're like, he's like, I've just become a Sith now. And that was like the big plot point of the film. Like,
and what's worst is the early trailers didn't spoil it, and then the later trailers did.
It's like,
and I think it was a marketing thing where they're like, we need more butts in the seat, so let's tease the twist, but like, don't give it away. Like, what? Come on.
Yeah, for sure. It's like you could just have John say anything Terminator like, and people would have been like, wait, is he a what? And then like, that's all you have to do. Like,
exactly.
Not that hard. Come on, guys. Like, oh man. But yeah, you're right. It's a lot of ebbs and flows with that one. But you're right. I feel like with Alien and Terminator, it's like the first one people hold in really high regard. The sequels people really, really love. Yeah. And it's like, what the heck happened? Like, it's just
it goes back to, I'll keep this rant very short, but it's one I love bringing up because it is like, I've noticed with film, what I don't like seeing in movies today is, for some reason, everybody feels pressured to make the stakes in movies the end of the world. But if you look back at the 80s, like look at Alien. What were the stakes in Alien? There's an alien on the ship. They all just didn't want to die. Like, it wasn't like, oh, if this alien kills them all, then they'll take over the universe or the world's going to end or they're saving the world. It's just like, no. Go back to Die Hard again. I'm just stuck in this really awful situation and I need to get out of it. And, I think back to one reboot that I really enjoyed, which was Dread.
Yes.
It captured that. There was no like, they were hinted at like grander plots, but for the most part, it's like, we're stuck in this building overnight. We need to not die. Like, that's the plot of the movie. And it was great. Yes. And I want to see more movies do that. Make that Alien again, where it's not, Prometheus, we want to know the secrets of the universe. Just make it like, I'm stuck on a ship with a bunch of aliens. How do I not do this anymore? And maybe it'll be better.
Yeah, and that's the same thing like with Predator. Like, the first one is about just like, there's a problem in the jungle. They send in some guys to take it out. That's it. And it's like one thing out there that's this unknown force that they send these specialists in to kill, and they're trying not to die. They go in to kill it, and then they're like, wait, we got problems. Like, we've got problems. What?
Right.
Like, it's like, just do that. You're totally right, man. That's why I think when we get these, these Marvel films coming up, and maybe even DC, maybe we'll try to tackle something similar to that, but to move back into a similar, just like small scale, a villain that's not going to end the world, and it's more meaningful, more, kind of personal.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the hope. Now let's switch gears. Twilight, no, I'm just kidding. How do you feel? Where was the high point, low point?
I actually saw the first one as a Riff Tracks movie, so really? I really recommend it. If you watch Riff Tracks, it's funny, but that's it.
Okay, yeah, I should do that, because I remember like watching some of those and thinking, I'm like, okay, I like the setting, music's pretty good, but everything else, I was like, I'm not really. I like whatever the dad's name was, but whoever that guy is, I think he's an okay actor, but everything else is like, no thanks. Yeah. So let's talk though about I'll talk Indiana Jones, obviously. Indiana Jones, prolific. We're talking 80s and stuff. A franchise that I rewatched recently. Man, those movies hold up. Like, for the most part. There's a few like CG effects that they do where you're like, ooh, that's rough. But everything else is like really good. I would say, I don't know what the high point would that be, 1 or 3?
They're both so good.
And are you like I'm of a mind now recently looking back on it, Temple of Doom has some like cool moments, but I don't think that's a good movie. I think it's really weird. I think it's
It's
very stupid.
It's funny. That's the first Indiana Jones I ever saw. And
Oh,
I remember
really?
watching it. I was like, this was Netflix back in the days where it was like DVDs. And I was like, wow, this Indiana Jones is really great. And my friends would be like, which one did you watch? I was like, Temple of Doom. They're like, oh, you're in for a great time because the
Yeah,
others are way better. This was before Crystal Skull came out.
that's so
And
good.
it's just only built up from there. I haven't actually seen it since that one time. And maybe I needed to keep it like that because
Sure.
maybe it's not a great movie, but like the other two I've seen multiple times since then. So yeah, maybe that would be. I mean, I'm sure the easy low hanging fruit is Crystal Skull. That's another one I haven't seen since I saw it in theaters,
Yeah.
and I don't know how it would age. I wasn't thrilled with it, but I also didn't hate it the way a lot of people did back then. Um, so like maybe I just need to stay away from it, and then Indiana
Yeah.
Jones will just in my mind remain this perfect franchise almost.
Yeah, I think that's probably a smart thing to do because I watched it recently and some of the effects, even there too, seem kind of strange. And when they do the kind of, when Indy punches someone and it makes that noise, because they shot it, like they did still shoot it on film, but it feels so much newer. It
Mhm.
doesn't have that kind of old school, like World War II vibe to it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a little corny and cheesy at a lot of moments where it's like, I really wish you didn't do that, but whatever.
It's interesting. There was I remember watching a scene breakdown from Crystal Skull, and it was the scene where he first meets Shia LaBeouf, his son, and they're at the diner and he's like stealing a drink or something. And it was a breakdown of how like this is really great visual storytelling by Spielberg. And so it was the sort of thing where I walked away going like, yeah, Spielberg still kind of got it. And like you see a little bit of it in Ready Player One. I think he hasn't lost it, but I think with age, and that's it. Maybe for these franchises to continue, they almost need to be taken away. Like I almost don't want Spielberg to do another indie because not because I don't think he's bad at making films now, but it's when you have a different point of view when you get older, and it's I think with him it's a lot of a softer point of view. He's in the movies in the 80s he was like shooting people and he was killing people, and now it's not so much, and I think you need that new generation of for lack of a better word, edgier directors, and that's why like the Force Unleashed is because had Lucas done that one, it would have been a totally different vibe, maybe with less death or I don't know.
Yeah, you had Force Awakens, right?
Yeah, what did I say?
He said Force Unleashed.
Force Unleashed. Yeah, I mix up titles a lot.
That's okay. I would love it if I was like, you're totally right.
Man.
Lucas would have directed Force Awakens. That would have been a very different game.
If you think this is confusing, you should hear me when I try to talk about the Fast and the Furious franchise because those titles are all over the place.
The only one I remember really well is Fate of the Furious because Fate has an 8.
Oh, the F8.
I'm like, okay, that's and that's what
I unironically love that franchise. I will I've wanted to write like papers on why I think it's such a perfect franchise for what it is, and I can't wait to. That's one where it's like the high point is it just keeps getting better. I don't think there's much of a low point.
You know what? Weirdly, I do kind of agree with you. I'm not the biggest fan of the franchise, but every time I see those movies, I just think, okay, just suspend your disbelief, Jim, for a second here.
This is fun.
They're all superheroes that can't die, and they're gonna do stuff that's really stupid and crazy. And these movies, like to see where it started as like street racing and drugs, and now they're like
not even drugs, stolen DVD players.
Oh, that's what it was.
There's just like DVD players on the back of a truck, and now there's like nuclear submarines in the Arctic.
I love it because I just want to see where it's going to go. Like, is
if
it
they
has
go to space? I'm going to be so disappointed if by 10 they're not in space. I swear to God.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I know you're listening. Just put them in space.
He's a big fan of our show, so he's definitely listening to. See, that's the thing is like where Marvel is like kind of in a corner where it's like, where do we go from here? Like with that Fast and Furious franchise, it's just like so. Where's the line? There is no line. We're just going to keep going because nobody cares. It's just like it's just going to be fun. Just come. It's going to be fun. So.
And I'll also say I want them to keep going because I do genuinely hope after 10 it stops, at least for a long time. So it's like, yeah, get wild and get crazy and have them like racing on the moon or something, but then stop and just give it a decade and then start at the bottom and go build it back up again.
Oh my gosh, instead of race wars, it's moon wars. Oh my gosh. And it just slowly becomes like a James Bond movie, like, even though they're doing spin-offs and stuff now.
Yeah. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm actually excited for that because I like both The Rock and Jason Statham, so we'll see how that movie goes. Like I think they're calling it like not Calvin and Hobbes. They're calling it Shaw and Hobbes or Hobbes and Shaw or something like that. And I was like, that's really bold that you're just going to call it that. It might be like Fast and the Furious.
It's so oh my gosh, it's such a wild franchise. Like the fact, what's funny about it, I'll keep it short because I know that I'm sure not everybody wants to hear about the Fast and the Furious so much, but like I just love how in a weird way it's very optimistic because the bad guy from the last movie almost always becomes a good guy in the next movie and joins their family, and it's like one of the most diverse casts, but it doesn't hit you over the head with it either. It's just like it just happens because there's like 20 people in this cast now, and it's just part of what it is, and it's a fun time. That's one I'll rewatch, and I'll like my friends and I like they think I'm joking when I tell them like I can't wait for the next Fast and Furious. They're like, okay, yeah, whatever. You're just being ironic, and I was like, no, come watch some of these movies with me, and with the right attitude, it's such a fun time.
Yeah, man, totally. Well, next time Fast and Furious is on, I'm gonna message you. I'll be like, hey, man, you want to be on the show? Let's talk Fast and Furious for like 2 hours.
100%.
That sounds great. Okay, so Fast and Furious, always on the climb. Indiana Jones, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, it's waves.
Yeah, it's waves. And don't forget, everybody, Temple of Doom, technically a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. So when Indy goes to grab his gun to shoot those guys with the swords and he doesn't have it there, it's a joke that's played for us in the future, even though it makes no sense. So apparently Indy's shooting people a lot. I don't know. That's his thing. I'm just saying. That's just his thing. You know, think about that next time you watch Temple of Doom. But Rob's never going to watch it again. And that's totally fine. You know,
we'll see. Maybe.
We'll see. I know that the ride over in Disneyland Paris, just side note, is more of like a mine car attraction that's vastly different than the one in Disneyland. That's what I've seen. So like if you ever go to Paris and you're going on that one, it is not the same. It's not Countdown to Extinction. You will not be in a time rover. You won't do it. Yeah, I was gonna say I thought you might like this. I love the time rover. It's an amazing vehicle that can literally transport you to the age of the dinosaurs. How? That's proprietary. Anyway, sorry. I'll just keep going. Other sagas though. Is there any other sagas you wanted to, kind of mention? We talked about some big ones, obviously.
Do you lump television shows into sagas? Well,
it's kind of hard to.
Yeah, it's tough because the seasons. That's a different thing. Maybe not. I think sagas are a little different in that respect. There at one point does it become a saga? Is the question, right? Is a trilogy? Is there a Godfather saga, or is that just a trilogy?
Yeah, well, we could, you could mention that. I usually think of like trilogies, kind of like once they move into 4, like I feel like that's where the story becomes more like, Harry Potter, for instance.
Yeah.
Saga,
okay. There's a saga.
There's one, which I don't know how people would feel about this. I personally love Goblet of Fire the most, but I know that one, like a lot of people, like I feel like that's where it really started to hit a fever pitch. Because like those first ones did obviously really well, and then it just kept building and building and building, and now we're getting like this prequel trilogy thing that's completely different, and like a stage play and like all this other stuff. So like for you, like were you a Harry Potter fan?
I read some of the books when I was in middle school. I watched all the movies. I enjoyed them all. I can't tell any of them apart is the thing. Like, so you're like, Goblet of Fire is great. And I was like, I don't know which one I don't remember what happened in that one. I kind of remember the overall story and I remember enjoying it. But I just don't remember like them as separate entities. So for me, like that's one where it's like, no, it was a great, perfect saga because I watched those movies. I haven't seen Fantastic Beasts and I know almost nothing about it. So it's sort of is out of mind in my mind. So it's like, yeah, it's this perfect one piece. I watched them as they were coming out. So as I was growing up, a lot of people I know kind of harp on the first ones for saying they're more kids movies, but like I was a kid when I watched them. So like that was fine for me. And now, as I grew up, I watched movies that sort of matched the tone of my age. And so it was like I was luck for sure, but I was lucky to be right in the perfect age range for them.
Yeah, well, I would say too, those first 2 books, especially the first 2, are kind of more fun. And that, like 3 is where it starts to get dark. So that's why I think the shift. And they also had Chris Columbus direct the first 2, and then they started switching out directors a bunch, which definitely can shift how your movies play out. But by the way, Goblet of Fire, he fights a dragon on a broomstick, kind of. It's like a Tri-Wizard tournament, all the kids coming.
Yeah. Okay, I remember that. I remember that now.
Blows the world open. You're like, well, there's other schools besides Hogwarts, and you're like, yeah, man, there's like a Russian one and a French one.
Do we think that tournament was like the seed of all of the young adult dystopian films that we saw for like that whole like Hunger Games, and then I don't know, all these other like competitions where people are killing each other? Like, was that the key that started it all?
That is the epicenter, my friend. That is so
Okay.
funny. Oh my gosh, because they're like, well, what if we took like this one person, but we just brought the entire world around them, but they're all different, but they're all kind of the same, but they all have like one specific thing they do. Like the boys are strong and gruff, the ladies, they're pretty and they kind of dance about. And you're like, okay. And then they like, turned it into Divergent, where it's like, all right, you're like one of five things. All right. You're either a smart person, a strong person. You're like, okay, well, come on, guys. I can be more than that, right? And they're like, yes, you can if you break the mold. Or Hunger Games, where you could just have a bunch of kids fight to the death.
Killing each other, yeah.
Killing each other, which, by the way, that first book, I actually like that book. It's a real page turner. The second one, I don't know.
I haven't read them. I saw the movies. That was another one I got into it really late after, like, I think it was the lead up to like the third movie where I was like, let me give them a shot. And I had already seen Battle Royale at that point. So
I've never seen that. Was it good?
It's good. It is that, but way gorier and more arbitrary. It's just there's like a little text paragraph at the beginning that's like, yeah, we put kids on an island and make them kill each other. Like, just get at it. And then the movie is just that. But yeah, they're cool in a weird, twisted sort of way.
Dude, that's pretty good. I'm just picturing you watching like the third one for Hunger Games, and it definitely changes drastically from the first two. And it's just like, if you watch that, you're like, I kind of liked it, and you're like, oh, go watch the other ones. You'll have absolutely no idea why this is all happening. You're like, okay, cool, I guess. Yeah. Well, okay. So there again, another trilogy that is just, or saga that potentially could just skyrocket into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
The high point was the end of it. Obviously, can't wait for those Katniss Everdeen sequels and prequels,
spin-offs and all that stuff.
I can't wait, man. Oh man. Yeah, I think those are the biggest ones. I'm trying to think of some others. I look around my room. I have a lot of posters, as you could probably tell. Assassin's Creed over here, but not. We could talk video game sagas and franchise. That's
a whole other. Yeah, that's another.
Oh, that's a whole other bag of cats, as it were. But yeah, I think those are the biggest ones. Unless you could think of any more that you really wanted to touch base on.
I think that's it. Like, it's funny. I just Googled famous sagas to see if I'm missing anything. And it's just like all lists of trilogies. Mission Impossible. There's one.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yeah, okay. There's one.
I want to take point on this. Okay. Mission Impossible 1. I'm not a huge fan of. It's fine. Mission Impossible 2 is kind of nuts. And it's John Woo, who you might know from other like action movies, like kind of Hong Kong action movies.
Doves
where it's like,
and everything. Yeah.
Exactly. Doves, dual guns, people slow motion and stuff. That movie, I liked it and I loved it when I was like 11 or 12 or whatever. And I thought it was like super good. It's fine now. And I'm pretty sure the bad guy in that movie, he was the guy who turned down the role of being Wolverine. And he did for that role. Like, he was like, I'm going to be in Mission Impossible. He's like, I'm not going to do this Wolverine thing. So it's like, Hugh Jackman, lucky break.
Yeah.
But that, for me, like, I feel like that franchise has only gotten better with time. It might have peaked with Ghost Protocol, but I just rewatched Rogue Nation, which I plan on going back to. I want to do like a commentary for it because I really like that movie. But like the movies, they're getting like, they're pretty serious. There's a lot of practical effects. I absolutely love that you get a crazy man AAA actor to do this stuff. Like, that is, no one else is doing this. Like, he and Jackie Chan need to be in a movie together. Like, it's like, that would be amazing. They'd almost die like 50 times, but it'd be incredible.
People would go to the theater to see it. Yeah. I feel like that's a saga where, for me, like, if I had to describe it, I would say it's like enjoyably disposable, because like I've watched them all. I've never really rewatched many of them because there is that overall plot that I think we're now starting to see come together. But for the most part, it's almost like James Bond, where I don't even think of James Bond as a saga because they're all these separate sort of stories. And so it's like, all right, well, what's Ethan Hunt getting into this year, and watch it. Cool. It's fun. And then that's about it. But it's like, they're, like you said, I think each one gets better and better, and it finds itself in a way where it doesn't try to be something different. And so you go into a Mission Impossible knowing what Mission Impossible is going to be like. You don't go into this going, what's this radical shift in form, and how is it going to be brought up to a whole other higher level that throws you off your feet. It's like, no, it's Mission Impossible. It's like James Bond or Fast and the Furious or any of those other movies where you're like, I know what I'm getting when I sit down in the theater.
Yeah,
and
totally.
It's perfect.
Yeah, well, you made a good point about James Bond kind of like trying to tie it together. I know in Spectre, they kind of do that, and they're like, oh, there was some bad guy who's pulling, all the strings the whole time. And you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. It's kind of a nice nod to people who've watched the other ones. Might not make a lot of sense, but it's okay.
Yeah, I kind of wish it became more, I wish it would go back to just being more of these one-offs, because I found myself enjoying James Bond more like that. I feel like the Kingsman's doing a better job at being James Bond than James Bond is at the moment.
Sure, yeah. Even though I will say that last one, there were some moments where I was like, "Why would you do that?" Like, there's like some like they like went too crazy with it. But yeah, it's very much like an R-rated 1960s James Bond. Like that's what Kingsman has become. Which there are some things I really like about that, especially the first one. It's very refreshing.
Oh yeah,
I felt like it was like a Deadpool situation where I was like, "Oh, that was different." Okay.
and I'm a big Matt Vaughn fan from a directing standpoint. Like Kick-Ass for a long time was my favorite superhero movie,
Oh,
or
really?
hero movie, I guess you could say. So like, yeah, anything he does, I'll check it out.
Did he do First Class?
Maybe.
I could be wrong on that one. We might need to do a fact check because I liked X-Men First Class. That's people are like, what do you mean First Class? X-Men First Class is like a prequel to all the stuff where Magneto meets Professor X and stuff.
He did, yeah, he did First Class.
Okay, yeah. See, I like the style of that. I like a period piece superhero film. That's why I like First Class.
Yeah.
And I love the First Avenger. People knock Captain America: The First Avenger, but it's a good movie. Like,
yeah, I loved all of the like past based stuff in that, and I was actually disappointed when the next one came about, and it was just like, or no, I should say, I was disappointed when it ended with him being in contemporary times, because I was like, oh, I would kill for another movie in World War II. Like that would be cool.
I guess you could edit it so that way Avengers like starts. That's how it starts, with like him waking up in that bed and he's like, what the heck? And then he goes outside, and he's like, Nick Fury's like, hey man, it's all right.
Yeah, right. Or just do a flashback thing. Like that's, well, I'm imagining Chris Evans is on his way out with the character, but
yeah,
if he ever were able to come back to it, I would love to see just sort of like a prequel and just see his time as Captain America. Maybe like in those months during the montage when he was fighting, like drill into that and turn it into a full movie.
So what you do is you give Chris a couple of years of break, all right? X-Men's been acquired by this point. You do what they were planning on doing originally. They were going to maybe have Hugh Jackman show up in the first Avenger, never name him specifically, but allude to the fact that the Wolverine was actually on Cap's team of Howling Commandos.
Oh my gosh.
That's how you do it. You call it Cap Wolverine or whatever, and you make it a World War II period piece where they're fighting Nazis and Hydra. Ugh.
Oh my gosh. Or you can even do, like, if they do get X-Men and they want to reboot, do a Wolverine, bring Wolverine back. Because here's the thing. I love the idea that Wolverine's been around for a long time, and I'm just starting to get more into reading comics, and I love going and seeing more about his past. So yeah, give us a movie of Wolverine in the 40s, like you said, and then maybe, or even flip it around and just give Chris Evans a cameo where it's like, oh, by the way, Captain America's around at this point and Wolverine's been around this whole time, and like use that to sort of slowly introduce mutants into the Marvel universe.
Yeah, that would, Rob, perfect. That's so good. And by this time, this is when you get in your more comic accurate Wolverine who isn't Hugh Jackman. You get a guy who doesn't look like a model, who's kind of like a gruff, stout guy. So he looked at Captain America, who's like, who's this guy? Who's that buff? You know what I mean? Like that. That's what you do with that. Like, but man, that's how you get, dude, a cameo from Chris Evans in a Wolverine film. I'd be like,
that would be wild.
I'd be screaming blood in the theater. It would be beautiful. Yeah, man, that'd be great. Okay, well, I feel like we've covered the biggest sagas. If we think of any, we'll come back, eventually, maybe one day. But now it's time to move into the segment of the show that we like to call Timekillers. Yes, that's right. We're killing time with the movies, the games, and TV shows we've been hanging out with, doing stuff with. Rob, what are you killing time with, man?
Rewatching Westworld over and over again, because I love it and it's the best show ever. And I feel like the more I watch it, the more I pick up on these little details, and it never gets old. That's nice. The big one. Yeah.
I just started season 2 last night, and I will say that while I liked the first season, I never come off an episode. Like, I always do want to watch the next one, but I do feel kind of like bad or like, what the heck? I'm just like, oh no. It's kind of how I felt when I watched Black Mirror. I'd be like, oh no. Like,
yeah, it's a heavy show. Like, I'm so glad that like for the past couple of weeks, it was Silicon Valley as the follow-up, because it was a good like way to ease out of that dark space of Westworld. But man, like I was thinking about the other day, and I do think so far Westworld, in my opinion, is the best show on television, like ever. It could, of course, go in a really bad direction depending on how the writing goes, but hopefully not. But like it might even, to me, like start to surpass films in just like the themes that it brings up. And it is like very clearly a show where they know where they're going with it, which is something you don't see as much in television, unfortunately, where instead they have like grand ideas and they go, okay, what are we going to do this season? It feels like they know how this whole show is going to end. And it's just, the acting's amazing. The music's amazing. I think it is a very I think it's a very relevant topic that we're going to have to face in the next 10, 15, 20 years about, where do you draw the line of what's human and what should be treated like a human. And man, it's just unbelievable. This season, my biggest mistake last season, I was like on the subreddit reading all the theories, and people predicted the big twist of season one. And so when it happened, I was like, oh, they were right. And then I was kind of bummed because I was like, my mind would have been blown if I didn't see that coming. So this season, I'm like avoiding all articles, everything. I'm just watching it and staying in like this little bubble until it's done.
Sure, fair enough. I get that. And being another work of Michael Crichton, I like to think it's in the same universe as Jurassic Park, and he just wants to watch the world burn and watch all the humans get messed up by their own creations.
Do you think he just had like a really bad experience at Disneyland?
I think so. I feel like
and he was like, "This is how he's taking it out."
I was just thinking, like, if Walt were to like consume one piece of media and he watched like one episode of Westworld, he'd be like, "What happened? Like, did somebody like did a cast member screw up?" Like, he's like, "I'm not gonna forget this." Yeah, Michael Crichton, but Anthony Hopkins, which I haven't seen him yet, but like Anthony Hopkins, one of the greatest actors of any generation. The guy is a master. I mean, he could play anything from Hannibal to to Ford, and like it's all over the place. Like, the guy is incredible. Like,
it is, yeah, some of the best performances. This is like a show where even though I've rewatched the first season a few times, I'm rewatching the second season episodes as new ones come out, and I'm already finding like little details here and there where I go, oh well, they referenced this in episode 1 and then the payoffs in 4. Like, I'll just go watch scenes because the dialogue and it's just like the monologues and stuff like that are all just so great. It's just that's one of those shows where I went to film school because when I was younger, I wanted to be a director, and like many people who do, I end up going in a different direction. But like that's the show where like when I walk out, I was like, maybe I should have just kept, like, that's what I would have wanted to do. Something on that level. Like, it inspires me to want to do that more. It's just that good.
Never too late. I would watch a movie directed by you. Come on, man. Well, then again, we're kind of like on the same team with a lot of this stuff, so it'd probably be, I would love it. Other people would be like,
at this point, if I can write a 5-minute script, I'm like, good, I'm done. I don't need to, I can't imagine writing a movie or anything like that. It's like,
for sure. Oh,
I'm in the YouTube mentality these days, but that's been really good. I've been trying to get back into games more. I'm eagerly awaiting Detroit 2 Human because I'm a big Quantic Dream fan.
Detroit, Become Human or whatever.
Become Human, yeah. Oh yeah, 2 Human was that really bad game that from the studio with what's his face.
Was it Norse mythology?
Yeah, it was a cool idea.
Yeah, but the combat was just you'd move your sticks in one direction and your guy would run and kill something. Like, you wouldn't hit a button. It was like, oh, really?
Yeah, it was an interesting story about how that whole studio kind of fell apart, but like, yeah, I keep confusing these titles around, but that's what I'm looking forward to. I've been playing, like, now that I left my full-time job in January, and so like I switched gears from like this mentality of like, oh, what's new this month? I'm gonna go pick it up, to like, all right, I have this whole backlog of Steam sales that I've been building up for years. Let me start working through it. So like, I just I started playing This Is the Police, which came out recently. Never heard of it. Really? And it's like a police simulator where you manage a police station, and so you have all of the cops that you have hired, and they have different stats, and so when calls come in, you have to decide which cops you're sending to which calls. And of course there's this morality play of, are you gonna lean into being a dirty cop, or are you gonna be, straight and narrow? And it's a very simple indie game, and it's like, those are the kind of things I've been getting into more because I can just play for 10 minutes and then put it down and go back to work. But I'm just waiting for Become Human.
Cool, man. Yeah, I would actually love to see that played, because I know some people, our Legionnaires in our community, have said they want to see that too. So maybe I'll have to play that. I don't know if we'll review it, but it's interesting, and it's hard because there's like a little bit of like a buffer and delay. It's like, if I'd want them to make the choice, but it's like, I gotta make the choice for them. But yeah, okay, cool, man. So that's what you've been killing time with. Over here, I watched 2 movies, very different films. I watched Game Night, featuring Jason.
Oh,
Bateman.
yeah.
Like, have you seen that movie?
Yeah, it was enjoyable.
Yeah,
it was
I thought
surprisingly funny.
It's like a weird movie because I think it easily could have been PG-13.
Mm-hmm.
but it was just like they decided to just swear a lot and maybe have a few moments where it was kind of like gory, but like the rest, like the premise is so strange. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, it's basically this married couple who loves to play like board games and stuff like that, and they have a game night every week. And one of these game nights happens to coincide with like this potential kidnapping of the main character's older brother, and it like goes crazy from there. But they think the whole time that it's still part of the game.
Yeah.
Like that's the fun part, is the premise that like a lot of them for a while think that it's all part of the game. So there's like, you know, like a gun that like the wife gets for a little bit, and she's like playing around with it like she doesn't think it's real gun.
Right.
It's actually a real gun. She's like taking pictures, like putting the barrel in her mouth and stuff like that. And it's just like, it looks like, as a viewer for a while, you're like, no.
Yeah, it's that great dramatic irony of, you know, it's not a game, but they still think it's a game. So the whole time it's just you're cringing. But I think what was so great about it was like you mentioned, you said, and then it gets crazy from there. There's this whole other part of the movie that they didn't market that I won't even say it because it's a spoiler. And part of the joy of this movie is you're just like, man, it just goes in a direction you weren't expecting. And that I think was really kind of neat. And it was just like a fun comedy.
Yeah, I would say I would check it out. There was a few moments where I thought it was really funny. I got to give a special shout out. I call him like evil Matt Damon from Breaking Bad. Like they have a neighbor who plays this cop who's been recently divorced, and he has this little white dog, who might be like a Westie, but and he just kind of is always watching them. And he used to go to game night because he and his wife used to be friends of theirs, but they only liked the wife. So when they got divorced, he wasn't invited anymore. So like he'll just appear places holding the dog and say something just like very strange, very creepy. And I have a friend who talks a lot like him. Listening to this guy talk, or like when he invites them into the house to play because they want to come, they need to, you know, get a police computer later on for something, but he like kind of he just kind of like slowly walks away from the door, leaves it open, and they're kind of like, do we follow him? Like
so weird. Yeah, it's so great. Also, it's funny you mentioned he was in Breaking Bad. I know he like this is the sort of nickname people gave him, but people were calling him Meth Damon.
Meth Damon, that's the one. Yeah, because he's like, he looks like the nicest, sweetest, just regular old Joe. But in Breaking Bad, he's like such a bad person.
Yeah,
like he'll just
psycho.
Yeah, he'll slit your throat in a second, and he won't blink. He'll just be like, "Yep, whatever. It's part of the business." You're like, "Whoa!" But yeah, he looks a little different. He's a little bit like chubbier in this one, but he's got like his police uniform, and he's just like, so good. He's my favorite character. He's so weird.
He almost feels like a character out of like The Office, or like almost like an Office Space sort of type movie where it's just like he's weird, and it's funny because he's just like this weird guy, and he plays it so well, and it was a very enjoyable. Like I will say, I don't think MoviePass is gonna be around for a long time, but that service has gotten me to see so many movies that I otherwise would have been like, I'll wait for Netflix, and that was one of them, and I was glad I went to go see it.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me because I've in recent years I've been playing like a little bit of D&D, and I think of his role playing being so good that he loves his ex-wife so much that someone will say something bad about it. He's like, "I'll ask you to not talk about my ex-wife that way." Like he just gets so defensive, and it's so funny. Like I'd watch maybe in a whole movie it would be too much of him, but like him just showing up at just like random intervals, you know, next door, like just I thought it was perfect. I was like, he's the best part of the
movie.
And
it's that sort of humor where it's like they like take little twists where I feel like in a more generic comedy, the joke would have been he's constantly ragging about his ex-wife. But in this one, he's just like obsessed with his ex-wife. And it's just there are a lot of little misdirections in this movie that I thought were really fun.
Yeah, so good writing in this movie too, specifically for his part, but some other people have a few good lines too. But the other movie I watched, and oh boy, I was always on the fence about it, but I watched Gods of Egypt. Because like I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you see it in theaters?
No.
Okay, yeah. So I just finished God of War, and I'm kind of in that mode where I'm like, cool. I want to watch more like, you know, gods and stuff like that. Great, Gods of Egypt. Let's check it out, right? There are some things about this movie that could be cool. There's some cool visuals. They have like these big snakes, some interesting takes on Egyptian gods. But if I were to tell you that there was a movie that starred Gerard Butler, Jeffrey Rush, and Chadwick Boseman, you might be, oh my gosh, Jimmy, this is going to be incredible. And I'd say, wait for it. It's going to get weird because like it's a pretty generic like kind of like structure. But man, that movie, I don't know what the heck happened. Like there's some like really truly laughable CGI and stuff in there.
Oh, yeah. It reminded me a lot of Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, and the way that it's like, it felt like it didn't feel like they went into it doing this, but it felt like the whole wow was like, look, if you told me that entire movie was shot on green screen, not a single frame shot outdoors, I believe you, because
Yep.
I don't think I saw anything that looked like an actual outdoors. And you know, it was a cool novelty with Sky Captain back with that was like way back in the beginning of like mass use of CGI. But like this one, I was just like, well, why?
Yeah, it's pretty rough. And I give credit to the actors for trying, you know, and I feel like this is a stab at something to be a lot bigger. But I think the biggest thing that really freaked me out, like Jeffrey Rush is in this movie, and I don't care if it's a spoiler for anybody, but he plays Ra, the sun god, and he's like on this boat up in space fighting this big Galactus looking thing. And by Galactus, I mean Galactus from Fantastic Four 2, which is like a big smoke snake worm. And so he just fights every day. He does that, and he doesn't transform like the other gods. The other gods will put on like these mech suits basically that just come around them and like an exoskeleton, and they will look kind of like another like one of the gods, like Horus. He looks like a bird or like a hawk. But Ra, who kind of doesn't have any of that, he'll just like there'll be fire all around him, and they'll do like these push-ins on Jeffrey Rush's just face, and there's like that's the only real thing in that shot. Like everything is just him going like
for sure.
He's just like come get me, and I'm just like you're wasting Barbosa, man. Like you're just not using him right. It's just like it really hurts me because to watch him and Gerard Butler, who Gerard Butler looks like he's having a fun time. Like I feel like he had a good time with that movie, and I like him because he plays a villain, which you don't normally get to see him play. He's usually like the good guy. So it's like, I wish it could have been better, but it wasn't. And yeah, it was
I went into it biased. I saw it because I had listened to the How Did This Get Made episode on it, which is just the podcast about making fun of bad movies. So I was like, yeah, let me check it out. It's on HBO. And yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, it's and like for some odd reason, like Chadwick Boseman is a good actor, but maybe the lines they gave him, his character is so freaking weird in this movie. Like he's so weird, and it just really stood out to me after watching Black Panther. Because if I would have reversed that and been like, "Oh, that guy's gonna be Black Panther," I would have been really nervous. I would have been like, "Oh no!" Like I know he does the biopics and stuff, and I'd be like, "Oh." But yeah, it's just if you really like, you need to again get in the right mindset. Maybe somewhat like Fast and Furious, but even more so. Like,
just you got to turn your brain off for that one.
Yeah, it's gonna be dumb, and there's gonna be stupid stuff. There are some interesting ideas, and there's also the bad guy from the Man in the High Castle, like the main Nazi in that. He's in there, and he's a good actor too. And it's like what the heck happened, man? Like, bums me out.
I imagine half of them took it for the paycheck. The other half, it was be fun. I can't imagine many people walked onto that set thinking like, we got $1 billion franchise on our hands. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, well, some of the people there, it's like the kid from Dead Men Tells No Tales and Elektra, I think, from Daredevil season 2. They're like main characters in this film. So it's like, oh yeah, they're probably like, sweet. Like this is going to be like a brand new saga I'm going to be a part of. And it's
what's his face from Game of Thrones? He certainly didn't need like the paycheck. So it must have been just like, maybe I'm just bored for a couple of months. And I always want to get into the head of actors who take on movies that some that like end up failing, but others that are just like clearly not even trying, because there's got to be an element where they're just like, well, you know, I get to make believe for a month and then I get paid to do it. Who cares if it's a bad movie?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But besides that, hop back into a little bit For Honor recently, which is a really fun game. They kind of have been really supporting that game. If you guys don't know what that is, you probably have heard of it, but it's a Ubisoft game where you get to play as like a Viking, a samurai, or a knight, or various classes or versions of them. Centurion's my personal favorite right now. But it's just a third person kind of like cool blocking and fighting mechanic that it's really much better to play with your friends because it's very intense one-on-one. So
that's Ubisoft, right?
Yeah. And by the way, you know what? I will say this. I like, you know, obviously there's Assassin's Creed poster back here. I'm not a huge fan of the first Assassin's Creed, but I really like pretty much all the Ubisoft games. I actually picked up, and I've been playing through this. I'm working on a wish list video for the next Splinter Cell, but I'm playing through Splinter Cell Blacklist here. And I actually just beat Conviction for maybe the second or third time. This one does not feature Michael Ironside, the voice of Sam Fisher, which sucks. Right. But everything else in this game is really cool. Like Splinter Cell is a fun, cool franchise. And the last two games in particular are the ones to me that have stood out and that I really enjoyed. So.
The internet gives them a lot of flack, but I'm in the same boat. I really like for me, it's Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. And, you know, yes. I am a big fan of those franchises. Everyone's always just like, Ubisoft, they put out all this garbage. It's the same thing. And it's like, I think back, and the last Ubisoft game that I purchased that I regretted, well, I didn't even purchase it. I think I just played somebody else's copy, was Call of Juarez the Cartel, which was like years ago.
Yeah.
And since then they put out things like not This War of Mine, but it was like this World War One.
Valiant Hearts.
Valiant
I have that,
Hearts was fantastic. And that they do like these sort of smaller indie side scroller type games, and then they do the bigger open world games. Like, I'm a big fan. I did a whole video a while back on when I wanted to see Disney become more bullish about video games, since Iger's all about acquiring, like acquire Ubisoft and just like there's your development team, and then have them deal with IPs. Because I think from a developer's perspective, I think they do a great job.
Yeah, protect them from Vivendi. You know,
Exactly.
just like, get away from them. Have you ever heard of Child of Light, by the way?
Oh yeah. That was
Child of
also the idea that what is like all of the dialogue was rhyming in that. Like,
Yes, it
these
was
very novel little things that alone doesn't make it like a great game. But that's the sort of thing where I feel like if Ubisoft was the publisher that the internet makes them out to be, they would have never done something like that because it might have hurt sales, like something like that, you know? I do think with the annualized franchises they maybe need to do every 2 years, I do think they like rush some of it out. But like, yeah, I always think the internet kind of blows out of proportion how bad it was. Like, I played Unity, and yeah, it was buggy, but it wasn't like I hated the game because of it. It was still enjoyable, you know?
Yeah, man, co-op like in the open world, that was sick. Like, there's a lot of cool things about those games. Yeah, Child of Light though, fun voiceover, voice acting exercise. Play through that game, give everybody a voice, and rhyme your way through it. Talk it out loud. It's so much fun. Yeah, man. I think Assassin's Creed Origins showed that. They said they took a break. They took a break from it once every other year. They got 100% more sales off that right off the bat. So they're like, wow, yeah, we're going to take a break. So it's like we're selling double already. So like, why not just do that? Just, I know you have like 3 different studios typically working on these things at the same time. That's why there's always a new game coming out. But just hold off for a bit, and they kind of changed it up a little bit more. Eventually, Assassin's Creed, hopefully, like with Star Wars or Marvel, they'll just keep making them, and hopefully it'll get to a point where it's like, oh yeah, everybody loves the combat now. Everybody loves the Assassin's Creed combat. It's been a while, but they got there, So
I'm excited to see where they go next with it. I just hope they bring it up to a little bit more closer to contemporary, not like totally contemporary, but like I'm waiting for the Assassin's Creed during World War II. I'm waiting for an Assassin's Creed or during like the Depression. We haven't had a lot of games set during the Depression. I think that would be interesting. Just something like a little bit more that I think I always wish that with Assassin's Creed, every so often they'd totally not change the gameplay completely, but throw in an alternative perspective where it's like, now we're going to do this one Assassin's Creed where, because it's World War II, there's a heavier emphasis on shooting. And, it's just going to be this one look at what assassins were like when guns were prevalent. And then we'll go back to stabbing and climbing and all that other stuff. Just, take these little breaks because the one flaw with the Assassin's Creed franchise is I feel like they create a world where every assassin has the exact same skill set. And I would have always thought in like this universe, you'd have some assassins that are like only good at like getaway driving or something. And maybe they live in a place where cars are a big deal, or, some who have great, marksmanship, and it's all about shooting. And so I want to see a little bit more variety there. But like, otherwise, I love that franchise so much. It's one of my favorite in video games.
Dude, yes. Did you play Origins then?
Yeah, I loved it.
Dude, Origins it just came out in the wrong year. The same way with Horizon Zero Dawn. They came out the same year as a new open world Zelda game. It's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like, you got buried. It's like the first really Origins. It's a great game. And man, having get a little wacky with it. I could have a sword that's on fire, and I could cause like a plague in a town. So like I could bring people into like this poisonous cloud area where they were taking tons of damage over time. I'm slicing them up. I'm like, yeah, man, let's get weird with this. Like that's fine. I'm gonna fight freaking Sobek. Like I'm gonna fight a giant crocodile boss. Like, man,
why not? Yeah, why not? I feel like the benefit with that whole franchise, and I hope they do it more, is also just going to different places. Like at the end of Origins, when you start to veer into the Roman Empire a little bit, I was like, I want an Assassin's Creed set in Rome. I didn't know I wanted that until right now.
Yes.
Make that and everyone always talks about feudal Japan and just go all these different places. I think it would be really interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if because of Ghost of Tsushima, which is a game that Sony's going to talk about a bunch at E3, I wonder if like Assassin's Creed wants to do that, but they've talked about, I've heard rumors of doing like the Viking one. Maybe they'll do feudal Japan, but they're going to wait a little bit. Like they're going to be like, we're going to take our time. We'll do Shinobi, or you can be more samurai-like, or whatever you want to do. But yeah, I love Assassin's Creed. Are you a PlayStation man or an Xbox guy, or do you have no allegiance?
I used to have no allegiance. Nowadays, I just have my PlayStation 4. I keep wanting a reason to get an Xbox, but their exclusives don't like really call to me as much. Not enough, especially because they've got this big push now of like you could also get it on Windows, and I have a
Yeah,
gaming computer, so it's like every time there's a game where I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get an Xbox, but I'm like, well, I could also just get it for the computer and just play it on that. So
perfect.
I from an ideal standpoint, I have no real allegiance. It's like whatever is a good game is a good game. I've started to just grow a little bias. Also, I have like friends who work for Sony, so like there's also like so I can get like games sometimes, and I
Ah, cool.
just knowing that they're into it. Like I have a buddy who worked on Uncharted, and like
Whoa, cool.
I'm just like it makes me love that franchise even more because I know my friend helped on it, and so
Dude,
I'm
that's really
starting to
cool,
become
man.
more a little bit biased towards Sony.
Oh my gosh, we need to get these guys on the show. Let's just codes for everybody, just free games. No, that's really cool, man. That's amazing. I know I have a friend of a friend who works at Respawn, the people who made Titanfall,
Yeah,
and
that
that's
was a
kind of cool
great
too.
game.
I'm like, oh man, Titan again,
So
cannibalize
good.
your sales. You know, you put out Battlefield and Titanfall within like the same week or two.
Yeah, that
Telling
was
you.
so bizarre.
So stupid. They're just trying to make money. It's just those execs. It's like the same people at DC. They're like, we'll just rush this Justice League out. We got to make those year-end bonuses, baby. It's like, no, what are you doing? You have a fiscal year.
Yeah,
Whatever. Anyway,
just wait. That was a really great game.
Titanfall 2, yeah, man, just buried. But you go back to that game, I don't recommend doing it now because the people who've stayed there are the best in the
Oh.
world. You won't see them coming and you'll die and you'll be like, I just got outplayed. You'll be like, I'm going to try to shoot it. They'll be flipping over you and shoot
Oh,
you.
for sure. That's with so many multiplayer. I'm like, there are days where I'm like, I want to go back and get back into Rainbow Six Siege because I love that
Oh,
game. That's another Ubisoft game that I think was really great. But I'm also like, I'm probably gonna get my ass kicked because I haven't played in like years, and
dude,
that's just how it goes.
if you ever jump in, I don't know if it has crossplay, but I was actually just hosting a show where one of the guys from Game Informer said he was playing Rainbow Six with a bunch of friends, Siege, with a group of dedicated people, and he said it's so much fun. And I was like, that does sound like
That's
a lot
the
of
way to
fun.
do it.
Like, because Ubisoft, they support their games. They might have issues in the beginning, like I know a lot of server problems they've had, like with that and For Honor. But they just keep supporting them
Yeah.
or Division, and they're like, now people are like, yeah, love these games. It's like,
And it's paid off for them. It's grown since then.
yeah, okay.
Um, the last thing I've been killing time with is I my go-to is still I play a lot of PUBG.
Oh, really?
That's like so it's funny because I'm kind of done with the game. The game's lost my interest a bit, but it's what I call with my friends like our poker game where, we always talk about how you see in movies people who hang out and play poker every week and they have their weekly poker game, and we were always like, why don't we do that? And then we realized we do that, except we don't play poker, we just play video games. And so like PUBG's our perfect like we go to play, but really we're just hanging out and catching up with each other. And I have friends who are like on the West Coast and some who are overseas, and so that's our way to like just stay together as friends and hang out
Cool.
while not having to focus too much on the game itself. So like we still play every week, even though from a gameplay perspective, like I don't touch the game if they're not playing because I don't have as much interest anymore.
Cool. Okay, that's cool, man. I respect that. I kind of do a similar thing, but it's rotating games. So like a few friends of mine that I talk to, like one specifically from college, that's how we stay connected. And
Yeah.
he's usually on the podcast and stuff. So we usually will be like, oh, we play the same game. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. But next time a Ubisoft co-op game comes up, I'll think of you. I'll be like,
down.
all right. I'll be like, hey Rob, how can we make this happen? It's Splinter Cell co-op, man, because Splinter Cell and the co-op in the end, spoiler alert for anybody who didn't play Conviction, co-op mode, it's great. Go play it. The very last mission you get, you're both on like an airplane or whatever. You both get a cell phone message that says kill the other player.
Oh my gosh.
You're like,
that's so
like,
cool.
It's like you've been working, you're tactical, you're sitting in couch co-op, and then you're like,
oh my gosh.
silent. You're like, so what do you the lockers in the back? And you're like, I don't know. Do you think I am? Or it's like looking around corners.
That's incredible. That is such a good idea.
And it just leaves such a cool and lasting impact because like I played that with my sister and she's not really confrontational. She's like, just come kill me. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like I was like, is there any way we could shoot each other at the same time? And it's just like, nope. Like,
oh wow.
So cool. Let's get in the last segment here. Let's wrap it up. Community feedback and questions here. So I had asked everybody this amazing question. If you could, this was from Missile Mage, one of our Legionnaires. He asked us if you could play video games with any Marvel character, who would it be? And we got some fun answers, and we're going to answer it ourselves too. So he actually responded himself. You're playing video games. This is a Marvel short. You're playing video games with Banner, having a good time. Banner dies, gets frustrated, turns into the Hulk, smashing everything. You're scared. Cut to you playing video games with the Hulk, having a good time. You end the short there.
I feel like that would be expensive if he
Oh yeah.
starts smashing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully it's not the console. But he said his real honest answer would be Peter Parker. We'd have such a chill time. Ryan Lehman says the exact same thing. Peter Parker, he would be good at the game and make the game fun. There's one more about Thor here I wanted to read, but I remember. Oh, here it is. Thor. This is from Look a Person. Thor. We play Dance Revolution, and he'd be a good sport, even if I get competitive and nasty. Yeah, he'd be like, "How do your feet move like that?" Rob, how about you, man? Like, if you could pick any Marvel character.
So I had two answers. One of them was Peter Parker. So I'll move on with from that one because I think that is a great one. I would pick Steve Rogers, Captain America, because he was not around for video games. So I feel like I would win, and that's what I want. And so I would be able to run circles because here's the thing: they're Avengers. Like they're all capable of killing me. I don't want to anger them. And so I was like, I'll pick the one Avenger where I feel like I have the best chance, and then I'll get to like just think about the small talk with Captain America, who's still, I imagining like getting used to living in modern times, where I'd just be like, oh man, let me tell you why, Back to the Future is a great movie series because he didn't get to see any of them. And I think that would make for great conversation.
Dang it, man. I feel like we are kindred spirits because I was going to say that too. And I'm just thinking, like, he's going to be kind of like an old grandpa. I'd be like,
exactly.
kind of like, what is this? And then you might play like, would you play like World War II games with him, or would he be like?
I feel like it'd be touchy. Yeah, I'd almost want to avoid those. I'd almost want to avoid combat stuff. I'd want to play like I would want to play an hour of Minecraft with Captain America just to see like what does he do in a situation where it's just building stuff. Like just give him a break from his job, which is very violent, and see what that's like. Something laid back where you don't have to focus on it. You can just chat while you're playing a game.
Dang. I'd also kind of like to see him play some of those twitchy-based shooters or like a For Honor just to see how quick his like reaction time is. And he's just like incredible. He's like, I don't usually use a gun. I used to, but I mean, if I have to. And he's like, oh, so wow. I mean, like obviously your guns have gotten way better since I've been asleep. And he's like, wow, like this is like I'm thinking fresh off the boat or fresh out of the bed. Captain America, like he's like he's getting used to it. And you're like, we're gonna ease you in, and like Rob and Jimmy are here to play some games with you. And he's like, what are you talking about, games? And like,
here's Super Mario Brothers, and now here's Assassin's Creed. Like, we're gonna make a big jump here.
That would be so
amazing.
That would be so great. He's like, you've made this much progress, and this many. I'd be like, well, and we've had a few smaller wars here and there, but once we've had some time, man. Dude, that's a really good one. Let's see. We have another question here. Where is it? Oh yeah, this is the other one. If you had enough vibranium to make one item, what would you choose to make for yourself? #Critical Podcast.
This one is interesting because essentially you're just saying what's one thing you wish never broke.
Yep.
And if I think back to all of the things that have broken in my life, I'd say like headphones.
Oh my!
Give me vibranium headphones, so I never have to worry about them breaking because I apparently go through those.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I don't know if it's cheating as considering an item, but I would love a car made out of vibranium.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, then you never have to worry. I mean, what's your insurance on that going to be? Probably nothing because it's never going to, unless it's going to cause a lot of damage when you hit other things.
Yeah, exactly. I run into things where like, I don't know, man. My car's perfectly fine. No one else would know it's vibranium. I'd be like, couldn't have been me. You'd see a mark.
I need to learn more about vibranium. Like, how is it like if I made a pan out of vibranium, what is cooking with vibranium like? Is that stained? Does that like stuff stick to that? Because if vibranium is like a non-stick with no Teflon or anything, I'd get a vibranium skillet because then I could just, scrape that up all I want. Nothing's going to happen to it.
Well, that's true. I think it does get like scuffs and stains a little bit that you can wash off because I remember in the first Avenger, great film, he gets shot, but he's holding like just the regular vibranium shield and you see like the little kind of like scuff marks from the bullets or like little smoke.
And to be fair, that's a bullet. So like if it takes a bullet to do that, then I'm sure like my fork while I'm cooking breakfast isn't going to do anything. So like I'd be pretty safe with a vibranium skillet.
Exactly. What if, oh my gosh, I just had the greatest idea ever. You get a vibranium like grill or whatever, like a little for like pancakes. And what you do is when you slap the pancakes down, it stores that, and then you can hit a button, it will flip the pancakes or the burgers or whatever it is. I feel like this is Rob, let's make this, man. We just need some vibranium. Wakanda, please.
Here's the other thing about that. You could make it in the shape, and I'm sure this might exist, a mold so that the pancake is the Captain America shield.
Oh my God.
So it's just a pattern of like, there must be, I know there's like a Mickey waffle maker and there's like a Star Wars Vader waffle maker. There's got to be like a Captain America shield waffle maker. Just make it out of vibranium.
Dude, you have good taste because Cap's your favorite, right? We talked about this a little bit before the show.
He's my favorite Marvel. It's weird. I used to be a big DC superhero fan before the Marvel Cinematic, and now I'm like leaning a little bit towards Marvel. But like, yeah, he's like one of my favorite superheroes.
Yeah, I love him too. I just there's so much. I just like I want to be him. He exudes so many good things. But yeah,
My argument with it is like the reason I like him and Superman, and then oddly enough, Kick Ass is another one, is that they Steve Rogers was a hero before he had the capabilities of being a superhero. He wanted to help people. Superman, he's like a god. He could fly off, go do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to be here helping him. He's doing it because he wants to. And so like I love heroes where it's not like I want to help the world because these tools give me the ability. It's like, no, the tools allow me to do what I already wanted to do.
Yep, that's why I really wish if they would have held off on Civil War and they would have done another Spider-Man movie where more of his mentor becomes Captain America, because they're both just kids from New York who were, pathetic and weak, and then they got these superpowers.
Exactly.
And then he would have been like such a conflict when Civil War came up. He's like, I love you both. He's like, I can't do this, like that would have been so good. Yeah, man, I love it. Root for the little guy. So good. All right, well, believe it or not, I think we've chatted enough today. We could chat for hours and hours, but I don't want to take up any more of your time. But if any of you guys ever have a question for the show, all you have to tweet is the hashtag Critical Podcast. You can tweet at me, you can tweet at the personal account, which is at JimmyGood013, or our official one, which is at Go Critical, capital G, capital C. But if you just have a question for Rob, or you just want to talk to Rob, where could they find Rob?
You can find me on YouTube. My YouTube channel name is called Rob Plays. It's youtube.com/Rob Plays That Game. It used to be a video game channel a long time ago, no longer. Now it's all about Disney stuff. But I've got that. I'm on Twitter under Rob Plays as well. And then I just recently started a more personal channel called the Rob Plays Adventure Co., which is just like vlogs of vacations and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I need to tell people this because, just to be completely transparent with everybody, I found Rob recently via the YouTubes and whatnot. I've devoured almost all of his stuff. And there was like a while where I was like, I'm just going to watch the videos where it's like him talking about historical stuff. I'm not going to watch the Minecraft stuff. And then I started just putting the Minecraft stuff on while I played games just to listen to you talk about like, armchair Imagineering or revisiting Disney and doing all this stuff. And I was just like, this is so good. I got to talk to this guy because I love Disney too. And I could sit here and talk to him about Disney, but not everyone's like a huge Disney fan. So I was like, maybe we could save that for something else. But like, I just wanted to hear about him. So please go check him out. Like both his channels are good. And, I know you just launched that other one, but your vlogs are cool and they're different than other people's because they're really highly edited. And there's lots of like gags and funny things in them. So it's not just like you walking around the park. There's a little bit more to it too. Kind of, I do that a little bit, but not as much as you do. So
yeah, I always say if I lived in Florida so that I could go regularly, like I'm waiting for somebody to just do a like improv variety show at the Disney parks, because you could do that so easily and it would be a lot of fun. And I want to do that. I just don't live close enough that I can. So
I volunteer as tribute. I want to do this. I just watched this sorcerer, like they're doing like that sorcerer's card game they have there in Magic Kingdom, and I really just want to shoot something with some people where it's like we get a bunch of cards, we don't play the game, and we pretend like we're playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and you're just sitting there and you're like, I summon Cinderella, and like just like no, like that would be incredible. But man, yeah, I highly recommend checking out both those channels. Please go subscribe to them over there. But before we'll get into the last pitch plug thing here, I want to thank a few people. I want to thank This Is Daleb for our intro and outro music. I want to thank Joran Evers for doing all of our cool art here on the channel. And he actually had something for me to read because he's no longer doing commissions because he's working on a comic. And this is the pitch for the comic. When David opens a mysterious box that transforms his arm into an alien weapon, he at first uses it for good to right the wrongs of his high school. But as more of his body is transformed, he finds that playing God comes with its own set of new, self-destructive perils. And he also said it's kind of like Venom meets Chronicle. And this is like an official comic that's going to get picked up. So our resident artist is like, he's moving on to bigger and greater things, which is, I'm so happy for him.
That sounds like a pretty cool idea. That's
my
biggest fear. Everybody has that moment of like, what if I woke up and I was Superman? And my biggest fear is like, I'd start doing stuff and then halfway through, like something would happen and I'd be like, oh no, it's not as easy as it seems like right at first. So that's a cool concept.
Yeah, and he actually has some of the stuff up, some of the images that he's been working on over on his Instagram, which you should definitely check out. And you should support that one because we'll be talking about it more and more as the podcast goes along. But as opposed to me talking, briefly about our Patreon, which you can definitely support us if you want to throw us a buck or two. Even get this podcast a little bit early if you're at a $5 conscript tier. But I would also recommend that if you're not going to do that this month, or you're already a patron, I highly recommend being a patron over to Rob, because I'm a patron of his. I really think his stuff is good. I think you should go check it out because it is totally worth it. And is it just Rob Plays on Patreon?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And also, I want to plug this too. You just put out a video today, and people will probably see this in a couple of days, about what Disney does with leftover food. So if you're at a Disney theme park, especially Walt Disney World specifically, if you throw that stuff away, what do they do with it?
Yeah.
I didn't think about it until now, and now I will always think about it.
Hundreds of tons of food waste every day, and it doesn't go right into a landfill. Where? Yeah. Who knows? Well, actually, people know. And also now there's a video about it.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to tease it too much. It's like, you can go watch the video. I'm going to link all that stuff down below here on YouTube. So please check it out. Give them a like and all that jazz. So, but Rob, thank you, man, so much for being on today. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a blast. It's always like a nice break to get to talk about like games and movies and other stuff. And, I know E3 is right around the corner, so there's going to be more than enough stuff to talk about video games. So, I'd love to come back in the future and talk games more and stuff like that.
Oh, that is a hell yes. It's just like, that would be great. I would love to have you back, because I would love to hear, especially someone who you do play games, but you don't play as, fervently as a lot of people that I talk to. So it's nice to hear like what people from the outside, a little bit more looking in, be like, oh, they announced this. That's pretty cool. And people would be like, people are angry about that and be like, well, it looks cool to me. Like, I love hearing that sort of thing.
Which, man, to go through the transition, because I used to be like inside on all of the info, kept up with the news, and I was the person who was like, I can't imagine just being like, oh, I heard there's a new GTA or something. But I'm slowly becoming that person as I get older, and it's like part of me is just accepting it, where I'm like, yeah, I play mobile games now on top of everything else, and then the other part of me is like, no, I got to pay more attention to some of this stuff, and it's a constant battle.
Well, the nice thing is that we're spoiled for choice, and no matter what you like as far as gaming goes, there's like an amazing game out there for it, which is really nice. So
talk about Sagas. We're at the peak of video gaming, I think.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, hopefully not the peak. Hopefully, but it's better than it's ever been.
And we still like show Cap Pong and then show him like Assassin's Creed or Zelda or something like that. Be like, this is what we came from like 30 or 40 years, man. You'd be like, what? Like, that's crazy. All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Hope to see you next time. And as always, just remember to adapt and overcome. Take care.